Chapter 27. 3 months ago, two declining tribes were fighting near Castile. Brian, as the defender of local law and order, of course had to go to persuade the fight. Kill all the rebels and capture a small number of slaves. One of the tribe's wizards, before dying, told Zaihua about the curse. His chief and the tribal chiefs who came to hunt them all met this golden flower. So, the two of them died under Brian's sword one after another. The tribe's wizard, on the other hand, tempted Brian to pick up the flowers he had made. But Brian is so shrewd. How could he be fooled? And finally revealed the secret of this flower under coercion and temptation. For this kind of thing, Brian was skeptical from the beginning, but he didn't intend to risk his life. So he said that now he gave it to the city lord, Galgoda. Achoo! Under the connivance of the nobles, the city lord let out a big sneeze. It is quite a disrespectful thing on such an aristocratic occasion. My gold tooth. But what a coincidence. When he sneezed, the gold tooth in his mouth actually fell out, and it hit a lady nearby. Sorry, that's my gold tooth. The city lord didn't care about face, so he retrieved his gold tooth from the lady. The lady looked at him with disdain. This scene was clearly seen by Brian. Really? This flower is more evil. Thanks to its trigger medium, it must be touched. Immediately afterwards, the city lord also left with his servants temporarily. Only his chief slave caste was left at the scene. Dear nobles, my master is ill and cannot accompany you adults. Please enjoy the drama harvest season first. Soon, farmers of different shapes appeared on the stage. These are all professional actors from ancient Rome. Judging by the standards of ancient Rome, their acting skills and expressions are quite in place. And Brian was on the sidelines, watching indifferently. For him, an otaku who was bombarded by the island girl group in his previous life. Advertisement: the drama these people perform has no meaning at all. I thought that if I had time in the future, I would need to train a dance troupe to entertain me. Ding dong. Detected the host's thoughts, released a random task, set up your own girl dance troupe, and rewarded a random exchange coupon. Random exchange coupon, which can be exchanged randomly, and can be exchanged for any item in the function list. This is good stuff, although I don't know what I will win. It is obvious that I will make a profit without losing money. The items in the system exchange list are either heaven-defying weapon designs or peerless magic weapons. Just like the sword in the stone on Brian's waist now, the Sword of Kings. Of course, it does not have the exaggerated ability of the myth. However, the Sword of the King is extremely sharp, and neither its texture nor its hardness can be produced by the current ancient Roman technology. Moreover, it also has extraordinary symbolic meaning. The person who holds the Sword of the King will surely ascend to the supreme throne and become the King of Kings. Except for Brian, all the nobles present watched with gusto. For the content of this drama to celebrate the harvest, otherwise it will be too boring. Don't leave your seat, and plan to go to the garden for a walk. As soon as he entered the garden, a middle-aged man blocked his way. The middle-aged man had a fierce look on his face, and his right hand was slightly raised, which was clearly a gesture of preparing to draw his sword. Brian quickly clicked on his attributes. Name, Durku Benirius Dutta. Age, 47 years old. Occupation, Noble. Strength, 69. Constitution, 47. Speed, 65. Hiss. Why is this guy so bad? You won't be hollowed out by a woman, right? And judging by his surname, it actually belongs to the Dutta family. Seeing this, Brian instantly understood the target of the other party's anger. Brian, right? You're the one who captured my son. Advertisement. While speaking, Durku put his hand on the hilt of the sword, ready to pull it out at any time. Your son offended me. How? Is the ransom ready? Brian stepped forward to meet his gaze, and at the same time slowly clenched his right hand, with such force that his palms snapped. How dare you imprison my son? Take your life. While speaking, Durku was about to draw out the Roman dagger at his waist. How could Brian give him this chance? He punched out with his already clenched right fist. This punch, impartial, just hit his chin. Click. There was a sound of bones breaking. Durka's lower frontal bone was shattered by Brian, and he also flew upside down. Old guy, how dare you draw your sword in front of me? Brian took a step forward and stepped directly on the opponent's chest. Do you know that the last person who drew his sword against me was crucified by me? Durku looked at Brian resentfully, but because his mandible was broken, which affected his pronunciation, he could only speak vaguely. Brian, I'm going to duel with you. You still want to fight me with your scumbag martial arts? Brian just kicked the opponent's beer belly. Durku couldn't bear such a strong force and passed out directly. Meanwhile, Santo Gorgota is being molested by doctors. What the hell is going on? Didn't I just have a gold tooth filled yesterday? Why did it fall off? And the two doctors surrounding him were full of question marks. They chose the best materials, but after only one day, they fell off inexplicably. Forget it. You two, hurry up. I still have something important to do tonight. The city lord agreed to the two nobles and sought justice for them. He didn't expect that one of the nobles had already been beaten half to death by Brian. Under the urging of the city lord, the doctor was in a hurry and directly touched the surrounding candlesticks, and the candle directly hit the city lord's cheek. You two bloody pariahs. Chapter 28. Hearing Brian run to his daughter's room. The face of the city lord Calgota turned green. He knows who Brian is, the scum of the entire city of Rome, the villain of the underground guild, gangster. Judging by the standards after 2000, he is a complete scumbag. Other than that, Brian looks great. Nearly 1.8 meters tall, his figure is slightly thin, but it is all muscles, coupled with a resolute and tough face. It is very easy to capture the hearts of young girls. Brian? At this moment, the Santo had the idea of killing Brian. At this moment, Balset stopped the Santo. Barset, one of the great nobles in the city, and controls the security forces in the city of Barcelona, has a very high popularity in the city of Barcelona. Master City Master, you don't have to be sad when things have come to this. Why don't we let him? Balset made a gesture of wiping his neck. For the banquet this evening, Brian brought only 20 Roman soldiers, and they were all stationed outside. So they just have to deal with Brian alone. However, Brian is not like an ordinary nobleman. His personal martial arts are very powerful. The city lord, who was already on the verge of eruption, quickly calmed down. Although Brian does all kinds of evil, his personal martial arts are very powerful. At the same time, it is precisely because of the extremely strong force that he can subdue the group of rebellious soldiers under him. Your Majesty, don't worry, my guard, Charles, is a Spartan. He once killed 100 people in the arena. Balt has staggered his position, and it was only at this moment that the city lord noticed the giant man who was nearly 2 meters tall behind him. In the ancient Roman Republic, the most powerful fighters were often those gladiators who were on the verge of death. The slave owners fought to inspire these gladiators. A goal is often set, for example, as long as you finish killing 100 people or win 100 games, you can get rid of your slave status, become a freeman, and then become the guard of the nobles. And Charles is the powerful Spartan warrior who completed the beheading of 100 people. Advertisement, the explosive muscles on his body all showed terrifying power. Under Balset's introduction, Charles clenched his fists, crackling. The Spartan warrior who killed 100 people. The city lord looked at Charles and nodded in satisfaction. In his opinion, no matter how powerful Brian is, he is just a kid who has just joined the army for half a year. How could it be the opponent of the Spartan warrior who killed 100 people? Seeing this Spartan warrior strengthened his vision of carrying out that plan. My lord, otherwise not only my son was injured, but Durku was also seriously injured. Please be the master of the nobles in this city. While speaking, Balses lowered his head. Originally, the city lord planned to stand up for the two great nobles. Now Brian groped into her daughter's room again. The city lord said to the chief slave beside him with a gloomy face, Cass, call all the guards and follow me. At the same time, Brian had already slept with Clarice. Holding Brian's strong arm, Clarice saw the sword in the stone that Brian placed on the table. Brian, how is your saber so special? Under normal circumstances, the standard sabers of the Roman Legion are all Roman daggers. Even the Roman officers were no exception, nothing more than better quality and decoration. But Brian's sword in the stone is obviously not a Roman short sword. The blade was much narrower than the Roman dagger and half as long as the Roman dagger. Oh, this sword is my prize in Gaul. It's gorgeous, so that's why I can take him to the party. Brian made up a random excuse to fool the past. Advertisement, moreover, the shape of the sword in the stone itself is very similar to Gaul's weapon. It's just that it's not an ordinary long sword, but a king's sword with a specific meaning. Besides, it also has a sharpness that cannot be achieved by current craftsmanship. I thought you were just an ordinary junior officer, but I didn't expect you to sit in the position of deputy army commander. Which daughter does not think of spring? Especially an officer like Brian, with such brilliant military exploits. The deputy head of the Legion is already the highest military official position that non-Senate nobles can achieve. Haha, it's just my luck. Brian smiled. He was able to enter the 13th Legion as the deputy head of the army. At that time, Brian's big brother former deputy head of the army, died in the army. Only then did Brian take his place. Otherwise, the notorious Brian would not be qualified to inherit the military power at all. Then you must be from a noble family with a prominent family background. Clarice blinked her wide eyes. More than 10 years have passed since the Marian reforms, and military power has gradually been in the hands of those senior military generals. And these senior military generals, without exception, are the great nobles of the Roman Republic. Brian is no exception. He comes from the Cotta family. His father once served as a consul and is still one of the important elders of the Senate. At this moment, there was a maid's knock on the door outside. "Mrs. Not well. The master has brought a bunch of people over." "What?" Clarice was shocked and looked for her dress. But her dress had been torn by Brian just now. "Don't worry. Let me handle it." Brian got out of bed and tucked Clarice under the blanket first, then began to get dressed in his unhurried manner. With the help of the maid, he put on his muscular plate armor. "Brian, come out to me." The city lord Gotha stood downstairs and said angrily. Chapter 29. This time, not only did the person not take the stairs, he turned over and jumped out of the window. Boom. The heavy Roman military boots hit the ground heavily. Brian was already used to this feeling. At this moment, the city lord brought a nobleman and nearly 20 guards behind him. Immediately surrounded Brian. "Brian, how dare you run into my daughter's room?" At this moment, even a fool would know what happened. And Brian is notorious, so if a flower is put there, if it is not picked, it is not Brian. Brian took a step forward and whispered in the Santo's ear. "Your daughter's skills are really good. She has been trained before." The sound was so small that only the city lord could hear it. But at this moment, the city lord is already in a rage. He was about to draw out the Roman dagger at his waist. And how could Brian give him this opportunity, faster than him, and took the lead in drawing out the Santo's Roman dagger. At the same time, the figure leaped backwards. In just a split second, Brian could kill the Santo. It's just that you just slept with someone's daughter, and now you're slaughtering her. It seems a little unreasonable. Moreover, the lord of a city is not an ordinary nobleman. If Brian kills him without knowing why, it may be difficult for the Roman Senate to explain. "Old guy, I advise you that it's better not to fight with me." Brian holds the Roman short sword, which is raised slightly, level with the navel. This is the standard action of Roman infantry without shields, and Brian has practiced this action thousands of times before, much more skilled than anyone else. Due to the limitation of the smelting technology at that time, the power of the Roman short sword was concentrated at the tip of the sword and could only be used for stabbing. And this action can stab the opponent's lower body, abdomen, and also stab the opponent's chest. This action can be accomplished with a little effort on the arm. "Charles saw yours." The noble next to the city lord said to a strong man beside him. I saw the strong man separated from the crowd and charged forward with a short sword in his hand. Under the light of the moon. In front of him, Brian looked extraordinarily thin. Advertisement murderous, extremely strong murderous. Brian sensed the murderous aura from the giant man and instantly clicked on the opponent's attributes. Name: Charles, Spartan, age, 38 years old, occupation, former dual field champion, strength, 96 constitution, 97 speed, 95. Seeing this attribute, he deserves to be the champion of the 100-man arena. His three-dimensional attributes all exceeded 90. You must know that the three-dimensional attribute of an ordinary man is only around 70. And for a qualified Roman elite soldier, the three-dimensional attribute may exceed 80. Monsters with a three-dimensional attribute of more than 90 can only be found in the Roman Colosseum. The Charles in front of him was such a monster. Go. Kill him. Let him see the power of Sparta. The city lord could no longer care about face and said loudly, "As you wish, Lord City Master." Charles, short sword in hand, strode towards Brian. Spartan gladiator. Interesting. Brian snorted and rushed forward. He hasn't been serious for a long, long time, and none of the enemies he encountered before is his 3-in-1 enemy. The Spartan gladiator in front of him was extremely powerful. I saw the Roman dagger in Brian's hand stabbing towards him, and the Spartan warrior Charles quickly blocked it with the dagger in his hand. He seemed to rely on his extraordinary physical fitness as long as he blocked the opponent's blow, and then he could finish Brian with a backhand sword. Boom. 2 Roman short swords collided. Under the tremendous force, Charles, a Spartan warrior who was nearly 2 meters tall, took 2 steps back. Big man. It seems that my strength is stronger. Brian smiled contemptuously and rushed forward again. At this moment, everyone present almost froze. The 2-meter-tall Spartan berserker lost to Brian in terms of strength. Advertisement, although I know Brian is strong, but this is too strong, too exaggerated. You guys go too, the city lord said to the guards around him. And the guards immediately surrounded him, cooperating with Cass, and surrounded Brian in the middle. And Brian directly threw the Roman dagger in his hand, nailing a guard to the ground on the spot. While everyone was stunned, Brian drew out the sword in the stone, the king's sword from his waist. Today, I will open your eyes and experience martial arts that do not belong to this world. Although the Roman short sword has its advantages, of course, it must be matched with a large shield. But for a simple sword, an inch is long and an inch is strong. Now the sword in the stone, which is half as long as the Roman short sword, can just show Brian's strongest strength. The moment Brian pulled out the sword in the stone, a terrifying murderous aura gushed out of Brian. The murderous aura on his body was no less than that of the Spartan berserker who had completed 100 kills. God knows how many people he killed on the battlefield. Don't listen to his nonsense. Rush up and stab him to death. Seeing that the ordinary guards were shaken, Dursit immediately said to the side. Roar! Charles roared, saying that he couldn't do it again. Being a Spartan berserker never flinched or hesitated. Brian held the sword in the stone in his hand, and before everyone could react, he slashed directly at Charles with the force of Huashan. And Charles's reaction was not slow, and he immediately resisted with the Roman dagger in his hand. Bang! There was a sound of metal clashing, and then the Roman dagger snapped. Moreover, the sword in the stone in Brian's hand also scratched Charles's chest, and blood was pouring out immediately. Whether it is texture or hardness, it is impossible for the Roman short sword to compare with the king's sword. Boom! The Spartan berserker who had finished beheading 100 people collapsed to the ground. Brian took a step forward, stepped on Charles's body with one foot, and gently wiped the blood off the sword with a white cloth. A pair of sharp eyes scanned everyone present. Who else? Chapter 30. At this moment, Brian is like a demon returning from hell. The guards around did not dare to step forward. The craftsmanship of this era made the Roman short sword only capable of stabbing, not chopping. And although the Spartan berserker is not as good as Brian, he won't be defeated by Brian in one round. In the final analysis, the Roman short sword in his hand is not as good as the sword in the stone. The king's sword can be slashed at will, but the Roman dagger is very likely to break under great force. This is also the fundamental reason why Brian was instantly dropped by Brian in the duel between the two. It's impossible. Charles is the champion of the arena who has completed the slaying of hundreds of people. At this time, Balsi still did not believe the fact that Charles had been killed. You know, in his eyes Charles is invincible. So in daily activities, he only takes Charles as a guard. But this Spartan berserker was killed in one move. Since you don't come, I will not be polite. Brian took out a whistle from his waistband and pushed it loudly. Every Roman centurion will be equipped with a whistle to command the soldiers in line. And Brian's whistle is specially made. A sharp voice sounded. Not good. Master Brian is calling us. The 20 Roman soldiers stationed outside went mad and rushed in. The city lord's own yard is not big, and in less than a minute, 20 Roman soldiers came to Brian's side. Master Deputy Legion Commander. A leading soldier salutes Brian Author Roman. Everyone present at the moment remembered that Brian was a Roman nobleman with military power. Except for the 2 nobles, the remaining 2 are left alive. Kill them all? Yes. 20 Roman soldiers immediately formed a shield wall and crushed the city lord and others. Come on. I am the owner of the city. They dare not do anything. Advertisement, of course. Before he could finish speaking, he was stunned by a Roman soldier. Apart from him, Balses was also lucky. In the next second, he also fell gloriously under the hilt of a Roman soldier's sword. As for the other guards, except for the chief slave Cass and one guard, they all fell into a pool of blood. The Roman soldiers faithfully carried out Brian's orders. On the second day, a piece of news spread like wind in the city of Barcelona. The city lord of Barcelona, together with the nobles Balses and Durku, conspired to assassinate the deputy head of the 13th Legion, but was discovered by the brave soldiers of the 13th Legion and subdued him. And in this incident, all the nobles in the city of Barcelona can testify and act as witnesses. Who is the deputy head of the 13th Legion? The residents of Barcelona city don't know, but they know the city lord and the 2 nobles. At first people thought it was a joke, fake news. It wasn't until someone sorted out more than 20 corpses from the city that I realized that this was not a joke. Something did happen in the city lord's mansion last night. Ogre family Darius hastily called his daughter Yulia over. My dear daughter, do you know what happened last night? The boy you fancy is really impressive. Yulia, who was called, had just woken up and wanted to take a hot bath, but her father sent someone to call her over. Didn't that guy attend a banquet to watch a play last night? Could it be that he smashed his stage? Yulia's first thought was Brian's impulsive character. If the language is not harmonious, he may indeed smash the stage. He smashed the stage. He's planning to turn the entire city of Barcelona upside down. Darius handed a piece of papyrus to Yulia. How can that be? Yulia could hardly believe her eyes. Brian actually arrested the city lord and 2 nobles in the name of assassinating a senior military general, and also beheaded nearly 20 guards in the city lord's mansion. There's nothing in this world that Brian doesn't dare to do, Darius said to Yulia with a smile. Advertisement, what do you think little Brian is going to do next? Yulia returned the papyrus to her father and said gracefully, the next step is for him to severely blackmail these nobles. Yulia knew that her own reason for assassinating a senior military general was untenable. Moreover, the killing of 3 great nobles will definitely attract criticism from the Senate. Based on the principle of maximizing profits, Brian will definitely blackmail several nobles. Inside the city lord's mansion, Clarice was walking up and down anxiously. Things happened so suddenly last night. She had S*X with Brian first, and then his father was going to kill Brian. However, Brian's personal strength is too strong, and only one person can frighten everyone until the arrival of Roman soldiers. Now his father and the 2 great nobles are all locked in the basement, and Brian is interrogating them. There are 2 Roman soldiers guarding the door of the basement, and no one is allowed to approach. Brian, you can't do this to me. I'm the owner of Barcelona. The Santo of Barca was tied to the cross at this moment, and Brian was sitting opposite him, drinking wine leisurely. My honorable lord of the city, please recognize the current situation. You are just a traitor who colluded with Gaul and assassinated senior Roman officers. Brian drank the red wine in the glass, and then put a big hat on the head of the city lord. You. The city lord was so angry that he couldn't speak. At the side, Balses was extremely calm at the moment. Brian, what do you want? What there is actually a sensible person. Brian stood up and walked over to Baltas. I want a ransom, 2 talents of gold per person. Just give me, and I'll let you go. Chapter 31. 2 talents of gold? Why don't you grab it? Baltas said ferociously from the side. Even a nobleman like him can't just take out 2 talents of gold. 1 talent is about 4,125 gold coins, and 2 talents are exactly 8,250 gold coins. I'm just robbing. If you don't give it to me, I will kill you now, and then I will convict you of collaborating with the enemy. Brian picked up the whip and slapped Baltas hard on the cheek. Brian, I am good friends with Iberian Governor Manigat. If you dare to treat me like this now, he will definitely punish you. The lord of the city, Golgotha, was tied to a cross and growled wildly. He has always been scheming, but he didn't expect it, and he finally forgot it. Unexpectedly, Brian's bravery has exceeded the limit of human beings. Even the Englefield champion of 100 people / is not his opponent. Of course, Brian can still beat the champion against hundreds of people, but it will take some time. The battle last night took a lot of advantage of King's sword. Manigat, that guy does have some tricks, but I'm afraid you won't see that day. Manigat, captain of the 6th Legion. Every governor of the Roman Republic was also the head of the legions. Compared with Brian and Catius, the 6th Army of the Roman Republic under Manigat's life is much more nourishing. It can be justified to levy the entire Iberian tax subsidy army, so he never worried about the financial situation. If your daughter didn't make me very comfortable last night, I should have killed you with a single sword. Brian clasped the head of the city lord Golgotha with one hand. Have you made up your mind, old man? Should you obediently hand over 2 talents of gold, or should I kill you and then raid your home? Brian threatened the Santo blatantly. Brian, I curse you. The nemesis will come to you, boom. A heavy punch directly hit the city lord's chest. At that moment, I even heard the sound of ribs breaking. Nemesis. If she does come, I will crush her under my crotch. Advertisement. Brian didn't give a damn about the Roman gods. If you want to curse, I will teach you a method. I heard that if you want to curse a person, you need to offer a sacrifice, preferably that person's life. How about it? Do you want to sacrifice your life to curse me? Hear about sacrificing his life. The old noble could not help but tremble. This is a common problem of all nobles, and it is also a common problem of most human beings. That is, they are very afraid of death. How? Don't dare. Brian pulled out the sword in the stone at his waist in an instant, and the blade directly touched the throat of the city lord. Old guy, let me tell you clearly, if you don't hand over the gold I want today, I will make your life worse than death. With a little force from Brian, the sword in the stone separated the opponent's skin. Blood seeped from the skin. Master Brian, I am willing to offer 2 talents of gold. Please let me go. Balset, who was tied to one side at the moment, had already compromised. He could see that Brian was simply lawless. If he couldn't get the gold, he would definitely kill a few people. Very good. You know the time well. Brian turned to Polo beside him and said, Polo, hurry up and let Lord Balses down, and then ask him to send someone home to deliver the gold. Yes, Lord Brian. As for the other person who was tied up in the basement, Durku, he was seriously injured by Brian last night, and now he has fallen into a coma and has a high fever. This guy, it seems that he can't wake up. While speaking, can't touch the sword in the stone on his waist again. Right now, the nobleman is seriously injured and comatose. It seems that it is difficult to extort gold from him. It is better to kill his house directly. Brian, what are you doing? Seeing that Brian was about to make a move, the city lord immediately said in a strict voice, Don't tell me. I almost forgot to say that this guy still has some use value. Brian said to another soldier beside him, Someone, carry him down and lock him up with her precious son. Soon there were only Brian and the Santo in the basement. Advertisement, Brian. You treat us like this, the nobles of Barcelona City will not let you go. Now the city lord can only rely on the nobles in Barcelona. These nobles still have some private soldiers. You must know that Brian only has 100 Roman soldiers. As long as the power in the hands of these nobles can be activated well, Brian can be defeated. Old guy, you'd better be honest with me. I don't want to kill you yet. I don't want your daughter to be crying when I ***k you. That will affect the atmosphere. Originally, the 2 of us could cooperate, but you are planning to murder me in order to help those 2 nobles. Brian said very displeased. In the situation last night, if he didn't have the sword and the stone in his hand, it would have been a fierce battle. A Spartan berserker who beheaded 100 people, plus 20 guards. Brian, what the hell are you trying to do? The city lord was really scared at this moment, because in front of him was not a nobleman, let alone an officer, but a lunatic. But Brian didn't answer him, but entered the system and opened the second-tier exchange ability. I remember that before, there was a heart-biting poison here. Soon, Brian exchanged the remaining 400 points for a heart-biting poison. Brian flipped his hand and took out a red pill. The city lord couldn't help but turn pale with fright, thinking that Brian was going to poison him. Brian, what are you doing? It's nothing. The city lord must be very hungry without breakfast, right? I have prepared some snacks for you here. The city lord kept his mouth shut as he wanted to resist. Boom. Brian punched him in the stomach, and the pain forced the city to open his mouth. Brian took the opportunity to press the heart-biting poison into his mouth. Swallowing the pill again, the city lord suddenly felt heart-piercing. If he hadn't been tied to the cross, he would have already scratched his own lungs. However, although the heart-biting goo poison's medicinal properties are fierce for the first time, it cannot kill people. After about 20 minutes, the city lord gradually quieted down. Listen up, old man. The poison you eat reappears every 3 months. If there is no antidote from me, you will die with your intestines pierced. If you want to live a good life, you'd better be honest with me. Chapter 32. 2 days later, Rex finally led the soldiers of the 3 brigades to the city of Barcelona. Clarice gave it to Brian leisurely and thumped his back. Brian, I feel like my father is afraid of you. Clarice is not a fool, so she naturally noticed the changes in her father in the past 2 days. Well, I actually punched him twice. Maybe I punched him too hard. Brian chuckled and subdued Galgota, but it took a lot of work. He is not only the great nobleman here, but also the city lord, so he really cannot be killed casually. Just then, Rex walked in from the outside. Master Brian. Rex led the first, second, and third teams to report. Rex still gave Brian the Roman military salute meticulously. Rex, you came just in time. Seeing Rex, Brian almost jumped out of the couch. With Rex's 3 battalions of Roman soldiers, Brian, you can do whatever you want. Master Vice Legion, Lord Legion wants to know your purpose for mobilizing so many soldiers. I will report this to him personally later. Now you immediately lead your soldiers to take over the defense of Barcelona. Hearing this, Rex's face immediately stiffened. Because according to Roman law, If there is no transfer order or emergency, the Legion cannot enter the city. But Lord Legionnaire, this will violate the laws of Rome. Brian knew the honest guy would say that. After a pause, he coughed twice. Legion Tribune Rex, a few days ago, this general found out that someone was colluding with Gaul and plotting to assassinate a senior military general. Now I order you to lead the army to protect my safety. Hearing Brian say that, Rex could only say yes. Yes, Lord Deputy Legion Commander. Chief Centurion Polo ran in from the outside, glanced at Clarice behind Brian, then walked to Brian and said carefully, Master Brian, Mrs. Yulia is looking for you. The slave is ready. Advertisement. Hearing this, Brian was overjoyed and wanted to go outside. Feeling uncomfortable, she turned her head and said to Clarice, My dear, go and take care of your father first. He has been punched twice more than me, and he may have broken bones. It is good. Soon, Brian came to the ogre family. I met the former Lady Yulia and his father Darius. Honey, according to your request, we have gathered 1,000 slaves and some mining equipment. Yulia let go very much and hugged Brian's shoulder directly. Brian felt the softness in his shoulder immediately. And this is my father Darius. Brian looked at Darius at this moment and found that this man was very extraordinary. Name, Darius Mchias, ogre, age, 56 years old, occupation, former Legion Battalion Commander, strength, 81 constitution, 79 speed, 78 at the age of 56, he still has such a strong physical fitness. Brian couldn't help but take a high look. Young man, you have performed very well recently. Darius spoke first. It can't compare to Lord Darius' old age and strength. Brian was sure that although the old man was old, his martial skills were still very strong. Even a centurion would find it difficult to take him down. Your boy is really glib. No wonder you can trick my precious daughter into bed, Darius said indifferently. Advertisement and Brian stood there indifferently, but the corner of Rex's mouth twitched behind Brian. In the past few days, 2 women had slept with him. First, the city lord's daughter threw himself into his arms, and now it was a gorgeous lady. Haha, the old man was joking. Please pay the higher price for the slaves you prepared for me. Although Brian is a scumbag, he never cheats his allies, especially when it comes to money. The price of each slave is as high as 6 gold coins. 1,000 slaves are 6,000 gold coins. Plus some mining equipment, Brian needs to pay nearly 7,000 gold coins. With a wave of Brian's hand, 4 Roman soldiers came over carrying 2 large wooden boxes. And Darius just glanced at it. I'm afraid there are more than 7,000 gold coins in these 2 boxes. There should be 2 talents. The 7,000 gold coins are the money for the purchase of slaves and equipment. As for the extra small part, it is my respect. The 2 talents of gold were a total of 8,250 gold coins, a whole extra 1,250 gold coins, and Brian gave it away without blinking an eye. Certainly. The 2 talents gold were originally used by Brian to blackmail the Kaido family. So Brian spent nothing in Barcelona. General Brian, what are you going to do next? Darius looked at Brian with a puzzled expression. Seeing Brian this time was already a big mess. He beat and imprisoned the city lord and other 3 nobles, and even blackmailed them. Right now, Brian, with military power in his hands, will either do nothing to stop and kill all 3 nobles, either prepare for the aftermath and try to build a good relationship with other nobles in Barcelona. But Brian didn't do anything. After he leaves, all he needs is a letter from the city lord to report the matter to the Senate. Even if Brian doesn't go to the death penalty arena, he will have to be dismissed. With these slaves and equipment, I plan to lead my army back as soon as possible. You must know that there is still a gold mine in the north waiting for me to develop it. At the same time, Brian thought that what awaited him was not only a gold mine, but also Hannibal's treasure. Gold mine. Your luck is really good. But if you want to mine safely, you'd better deal with the aftermath of the things in Barcelona. Chapter 33. Darius sincerely reminded that she didn't want the man her daughter fell in love with to end up here. Don't worry. Those few nobles can't afford to make big waves. Brian waved his hand and said indifferently, but as long as Calgata reports a letter to the Roman Senate, it will be very troublesome at that time. Darius, who is familiar with the Roman system, analyzed from the side. In his opinion, Brian can't just let those nobles go without knowing why. It is also good to kill them. Let there be no proof. I have already made arrangements. They dare not. Satisfied, Brian turned to Polo and said, Polo, take these slaves and equipment. Let's go back to the north. Yes, Master Brian. There are 2 things to do right now. One is to bring these 1,000 slaves to the northern Red River Valley and use large-scale equipment to start mining gold. The second thing is to check, what exactly did Hannibal buy from Reyes? Although it is inferred that there is a high possibility that it is the property he robbed from Iberia, it is also possible that it is a pile of scrap metal. On balance, Brian intends to do the first thing first, which is to perfect his gold mine. And I don't know what happened to the Gaul tribe across the Red River Valley. And how is Antebella doing now? The most important thing is whether her father is dead or not. Thinking of this, Brian decided to go back to the Red River Valley of Castilla immediately. Little Brian, are you leaving? Yulia stepped forward and hugged Brian's waist. Of course. Things here are almost done. Not to be outdone, Brian hugged Yulia. In front of his father, he walked towards the nearest bedroom. It's too direct. Darius couldn't help but smiled wryly. Damn young man. At least he has to avoid his old man. Polo, on the other hand, looked familiar and directed the soldiers to escort the slaves here to the outside of the city. Advertisement wait until Brian is done before setting off. At the same time, the Duttas, now they've been disarmed by Brian, and even the cooking knives were put away. They paid Brian the full 13,000 gold coins, and Durku and his son let it back. Since Durku was injured by Brian 3 days ago, he has not received timely treatment, and at this moment he has fallen into a high fever and is unconscious. This matter can't be left alone. Gritting his teeth, Deuter said that Brian first kidnapped him and then extorted ransom, and later severely injured his father. This tone can't be justified. Deuter, wait a minute. After the devil leaves Barcelona and your father is better, we will go to Rome together. Even if we go to the Senate, we must ask for an explanation, Duterte's mother said indignantly. At the same time, he was somewhat disappointed with her husband and son. They were all beaten and injured by Brian in a 1v1 situation. She couldn't believe it. Was Brian really that strong? The news that Brian beheaded the Spartan berserker had been blocked that day. In front of the world, Brian is still a cynical soldier. No one thought that he could kill the champion of the gladiatorial arena alone. Just then, a strong wind blew. A feminine woman came in from outside. Seeing the comer, Duterte couldn't help being overjoyed. Because the one who came was Bernani. Who is she? Deuter's mother asked repeatedly, thinking it was his son's new love. She is the little girl from the Baca family who ran away 4 years ago. The Baca family. Could it be? Advertisement, yes. The secret of Hannibal's treasure lies with him. Duterte could almost jump up with excitement. In order to redeem him and his father, he had almost emptied the entire family. But at this moment, Bernani took out a short knife. Deuter takes his life. And the latter smiled jokingly. Although he can't beat Brian, can't he deal with you, a little killer? So inadvertently picked up a wooden stick. The two fought against each other. Duterte felt bad about it. Bernani is a Zoroastrian killer who has been strictly trained, and her close combat ability has reached a terrifying level. If he hadn't met Brian, ordinary people would really not be his opponents. Brush. But the two fought until the third round, and the dagger in Bernani's hand crossed Deuter's arm. A little injury is nothing. Deuter didn't care at all, but the next moment his body stiffened suddenly, and finally he collapsed to the ground. There is poison on the knife. That's right. This is the poison from Parthia. You can die with peace of mind. 5 minutes later, when Bernani left the Dutta family, everyone in the Dutta family was slaughtered. Half an hour later, such a tragedy also happened to the Gatu tribe. This time, the city lord personally led the security forces, but he failed to catch the murderer. He only knew that she was a descendant of the Baca family, named Bernani. When Darius got the news, Brian, it really lives up to its reputation. It's really vicious. At this moment, he finally understood what Brian said. I had already made arrangements. Chapter 34. After meeting the noble lady, Brian led the legion, only 3 brigades, northward and returned to Castile. From Barcelona to Castilla, it only takes 2 days if you march quickly. But now Brian, with 1,000 slaves and dozens of carriages and equipment. The original 2-day journey will take at least 5 days to arrive. Just 1 day after Brian left Barcelona, the female killer Bernani appeared in front of the team. The previous agreement between Brian and her was that if she could slaughter the Dutta and Kaido families, Brian would give her freedom. Of course, he is not afraid of her betrayal. If he fails to complete the task, then the city lord Galgota will make up for it. Master Brian, it's the killer. Polo recognized Bernani immediately, and there was an episode between Polo and Bernani once. Although Bernani is a killer, she is still a woman who has just grown up, and it was a young and beautiful girl type. Polo once couldn't hold back and broke into the cage where Bernini was held. When the shackles were removed from her body, Bernini actually fought Poirot like a wild cat. The centurion Polo, who has experienced many battles, was unable to suppress Bernini for a while in close combat. Hearing the killer, the surrounding soldiers all became alert. Brian's personal guards immediately surrounded Brian. "Don't be nervous, let her come," Brian waved to the crowd and said. Soon, the Roman soldiers gave way to a sidewalk. However, the soldiers are still on guard against the female killer, Bernini. The female killer walked up to Brian and knelt down on one knee. "According to our agreement, you can be free as long as you complete the task." Before Brian planned to subdue female killers, they were only killers trained by the Parthian Zoroastrian cult. Just like the terrorists of later generations, they had no chance to communicate at all. That's why Brian came up with a deal to kill everyone in the Dutta family and the family. Because of the hatred with the Dutta family, Bernini will definitely kill them. As for the Kaido family, it is entirely possible for the city lord to make up for it and finally put the blame on Bernini. Advertisement, however, Bernini completed this task very well and then disappeared. "I am willing to be the sharp blade in Lord Brian's hands." While speaking, Bernini took out the dagger at her waist and gently held it with both hands. Ding dong. Successfully subdued the female killer Bernini. Reward 500 points. The harsh voice of the system came to Brian's ear. Until now, Brian was sure that Bernini was really attached. In fact, as long as you think about it carefully, it is not difficult to understand. Without Brian's help, it would not be possible for Bernini to avenge and kill the entire Dutta family. And besides being a killer, Bernini has no other skills. "Very good. From now on you can be my personal guard." With a wave of his hand, Brian ordered the female killer to retreat to the rear, and the Legion moved on. Meanwhile, Polo was stunned. "Otherwise, your lord is really too powerful," even subdued the female killer. In fact, Brian was also worried about whether the female killer was here to kill him. If there was no system prompt, he would order the soldiers to kill Bernini. After 3 days of marching, 1,000 slaves were on the road and 50 died on the road. After all, they were slaves with extremely poor physical fitness. It was not surprising that some people fell to the ground after a long journey in the past few days. It's just that 50 people are a little too much, and this is 300 gold coins. Before returning to Castile, Brian met Cadius' confidant, Legion Tribune Lucius. "Master Brian, you are back," Lucius said in a panic, as if he had lost his backbone. "What happened in such a panic?" Brian asked suspiciously. For a long time, Lucius and Rex had been the same people, the one with the bitter face, the one who didn't smile unless told to. "Master Brian, the Legion commander is dying." Okay. It was like a bolt of lightning flashed across Brian's heart. Advertisement, "What happened to the commander of the Cadius Legion?" Brian said, pretending to be nervous, but at the same time he was happy that this old thing was finally born. All this time, Brian had hoped that Cadius would die so he could replace him as Legionnaire. The leader of the Legion was attacked by Gaul and received an arrow in his chest. He has been in a coma for a day. Then Brian finally understood what happened. Earlier, Brian was looking for gold in the riverbeds of the Red River Valley. Nearly 1,000 pounds of gold were found in just 3 days. But when Cadius arrived there, where was the gold there? The 3 teams worked for 3 days and found no more than 50 pounds. Subsequently, Cadius led a large group of Roman soldiers to continue north. However, they encountered Gallic barbarian warriors. A large group of Roman soldiers, about 500 people, and the Gaul barbarian warriors they encountered that day turned out to be as many as 20,000. The huge gap in quantity cannot be balanced by relying on advanced systems and qualities. Soon, Cadius fled back with only 30 people left, but he was also shot in the chest. Just after returning to the barracks, Cadius fainted due to excessive blood loss. The more than 10 Legion tribunes under him together planned to retrieve Brian, and Brian presided over the overall situation. Just in time, Lucius met Brian on the way. "Let's go back to the barracks immediately." Cadius was badly wounded, and it was the damned Gauls who did it. For Brian, this was a godsend. Originally, he planned to find a reason to kill Cadius, and then blame the Gaul tribe. It's good now. All troubles are saved. In this era, an arrow is shot in the chest cavity is broken, and the mouth is connected to the outside world, which is basically no different from the death penalty. Rex, you lead a large group of people and continue to escort the slaves. Polo leads the rest of the people, and I rush to Castile. Chapter 35. After being freed from slavery, Brian returned to the barracks in just one night. At this moment, the 13th Army has lost its former glory. After all, the head of the Legion was hammered to death, and the deputy head of the Legion was out. At this moment, the entire Legion is like a pan of loose sand, losing its fighting spirit. Under the first ray of sunlight in the morning, Brian rode back, discovered by soldiers on guard. Look, it's Lord Brian. It's Master Brian. As soon as Brian arrived at the barracks, countless soldiers greeted him. Among them is Carl C., the camp leader. How is the Legion commander now? Brian immediately asked and said that although he wished the army leader would die immediately, he still had to save face, and there were still countless pairs of eyes staring at him right now. The head of the regiment is seriously injured, and he is still in a coma. The position is too close to the heart. The doctor said that as long as the bow and arrow are pulled out, the head of the Legion will die immediately. Location too close to the heart? With the current level of medical treatment, wouldn't that be certain death? Thinking of this, Brian raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and then instantly turned into an angry expression. Damn Gauls. One day I'll crucify them all. The surrounding soldiers also shouted instantly. Crucify to the cross and avenge the Legion commander. Crucify to the cross and avenge the Legion commander. Brian stretched out his hands to comfort the surrounding soldiers, then turned and walked towards the big tent. When I came to the tent, I found that several military doctors were taking care of Cadius. At this moment, Cadius's face was flushed, obviously having a high fever. And the position of the bow and arrow is just 2 fingers to the left of the center of the chest. This position is almost a certainty. The bow and arrow have pierced his heart. Death is just a matter of time. I don't know, was it a flashback? Or did Brian's arrival wake up Cadius? Cadius miraculously woke up. Advertisement, old man. Are you all right? Brian took a step forward and grabbed Cadius' right hand, doing his best. Brian, your kid is finally back, Cadius said weakly. At the moment he is quite weak. What is going on? It was the Gauls of Terrago. Legion Tribune, Lucius whispered from the side. And Cadius smiled wryly. I know you kid has always wanted to take my place, but that should wait until after my death. I didn't expect this day to come too soon. But Brian didn't speak, but held Cadius's hand even tighter. Originally, he planned to pull out the bow and arrow directly to let Cadius die directly, but considering his current situation, there is not much difference. I have a son. Cadius is just 3 years old this year. If possible, he can grow up under your protection. Suddenly, he felt an extremely domineering power coming from Cadius. Of course, Brian understood what Cadius meant. Now that he was dead, the 13th Legion must fall to Brian. And Cadius simply made a favor before that and gave the 13th Legion to Brian. Of course, the condition is to take care of his young son. Don't worry, I will bring up little Gate. Although Brian is a scumbag and a scum, he is extremely committed and will definitely accomplish what he promised. Hearing Brian's promise, Cadius actually smiled. Then he pointed to the bow and arrow on his chest. It's so uncomfortable that this thing is blocking my heart. Can you pull it out? But pull it out, and you will die instantly. Originally, he planned to pull out the bow and arrow and kill Cadius. And now Brian found that he couldn't do that in front of the officers. This is an order. Pull it out. Advertisement, Cadius ordered with a serious face. Well, old man, this is the last and only time. Brian smiled, and then pulled out the bow and arrow on Cadius' chest with one hand. Puff. When pulling out the bow and arrow, the strong pressure in the heart forced the blood to spurt out immediately. Cadius left a warm smile and died. We want to avenge the Legion commander. Holding the bow and arrow high, Brian shouted at the officers in the room. And the officers in the room immediately roared. Although it was Brian who indirectly killed Cadius, his real murderer was a Gaul. Revenge for the leader of the Legion. Revenge for the leader of the Legion. The officers raised their right hands and roared. Everyone listen to me. At this moment, Polo, with quick eyes and quick hands, stood up. The 13th Legion is one of the most elite legions in the Republic. However, the Legion cannot be without a Legion commander for a day. Now I elect Lord Brian as the Legion commander. There were nearly 10 legionary tribunes and dozens of centurions at the scene. Especially the words of Polo, the chief centurion, are very weighty. And most of the centurions have gone out with Brian to fight the autumn wind. At this moment, I support Brian without hesitation to become the Legion commander. Of course, this Legion chief is only the acting Legion chief in name. Only the Senate has the right to appoint legionaries. And some tribunes, who usually don't understand Brian's actions, have no choice but to follow the trend and support Brian at this moment. Very good. Everyone recommended me. Then I will take the post of Legion Commander temporarily. While speaking, Brian threw aside the bow and arrow that was stained with the former head of the Legion, and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. Years of long-cherished wishes finally fulfilled. Brian can now finally take full control of an army. Chapter 36. Tails, the eldest son of the chieftain of the Tarago tribe. The battle with the Roman legion 2 days ago won him a very high prestige within the tribe. This is the first time that he personally and even the entire tribe defeated the Roman legion. Although the opponent's general fled, his cronies told him that the Roman general had an arrow in his chest and he might not survive. Judging by the other party's attire, he was at least a legion tribune. The legionary tribune, that is the nobleman of Rome. It was a pity that Tails did not capture the officer. If that officer can be captured and sacrificed in the tribe, he can definitely rely on his military exploits to become the next leader of the tribe. And Thor's also discovered gold in the Red River Valley. No wonder my younger sister led her men here to look for gold some time ago. Tails snorted softly. He couldn't help thinking that his sister was too useless and dared to enter here to confront the Roman legion with 200 or 300 people. Only a man like him can become the leader of the tribe and defeat the Roman legions. Master Tails, Master Wizard is looking for you. A subordinate said respectfully in front of Tails. There is no other reason, because Tails led the Gallic warriors to defeat the Roman legion. This was something that had never happened before among all the Gallic tribes. Although there were only 500 or 600 people on the other side, and nearly 2,000 people were killed on our own side, it was of great significance. Soon Tails met the wizard of the tribe. Honorable Mr. Wizard, do you have anything to ask me? The wizard of the tribe is an old man in his 60s and 70s. His face is covered with various patterns, so that he can't see his face clearly. Yes, I have just been guided by the great god Bellinos. God's guidance? Yes, God Bellinos guides us to leave here quickly, otherwise bad luck will befall us. Joke? Advertisement, did you just leave here when you said leave? He just defeated the Roman legion 2 days ago, and he also discovered gold here. It's impossible to say anything, just give up here. 20,000 of them were here in just 1 day, but they unearthed nearly 300 pounds of gold. Okay, Master Wizard, I will refer to your opinion, but you must not leave here. I want to go back with gold and news of the big victory. Although a lot of gold has been unearthed, it is not enough. He's going to keep pushing south and dig out all the gold in the Red River Valley, Hanoi. However, he discovered one thing. The amount of gold decreased the further south he went. In fact, the gold in the entire Red River Valley Hanoi was almost plundered by Brian. There are only some in the direction close to the tribe, which has been almost excavated in the past 2 days. Meanwhile, Brian has led the Roman legions into the Red River Valley. In addition to leaving a small number of people to take care of the camp and the 1,000 slaves, Brian brought 9 brigades, nearly a legion of soldiers, and slowly advanced towards the north. Since there were basically not many people left in the brigade led by Cadius, it was said that they were allowed to stay and guard the camp. Regarding the matter of leading an army northward to attack the Gaul tribes. This time, for example, Legion Tribune Rex and Lucius did not stop them. Today is different, because their legionary commander, their immediate boss, died under the arrows of the Gauls. This blood debt had to be paid. If they really easily let go of the Gaul tribe on the opposite side, even if Brian does not attack, the soldiers of the entire legion may not agree. At this moment, the ancient Roman soldiers during the Republic period were very bloody. Rex, send out scouts to scout. What are these barbarians doing here? The 13th Army has advanced nearly 15 miles northward, and there are already faint signs of Gaul activities here. The scouts that Brian sent immediately. The scouts sent out soon came back to report. Advertisement, report to the Legion commander. We found that many Gauls are panning for gold in Hanoi. The scout had been digging for gold here with Brian. Seeing a large number of people on the other side looking for things in Xiaohe, I immediately realized that they were also panning for gold. The whole army charges. This time I don't want to see any prisoners. Kill them all. Yes. The legionary tribunes and centurions behind Brian immediately said yes. Due to the width of the valley, Brian could only send 3 teams abreast. The remaining 6 brigades can only be reserve teams. The horns of Rome resounded through the valley. The Gaul who was panning for gold heard the sound of the horn and immediately froze there, then ran ashore frantically, looking for the weapon he had already abandoned. Lord Tails, it's bad. The Romans are here. A Gaul rushed into Tails' tent like crazy, and Tails had just gotten off a woman, and was frantically putting on his battle armor. How did the Romans come here? Wasn't he defeated by me? Tails said hurriedly. At the same time, it was first discovered that part of the Roman legion, the Gauls, had already fought with the Roman legion. Gauls were generally strong and taller than Roman soldiers. However, they lined up in a loose formation, holding huge axes in their hands, and rushed up bravely one by one. Soldiers, it's time to avenge the legion commander. Raise the shields in your hands and cut the opponent's throat with the dagger in your hands. Brian was mobilizing for the last war. Boom. In the next second, the Roman legion collided with the Gauls. Kill. Avenge the legion commander. Chapter 37. This time the Roman legion was completely murderous, and no prisoners were needed. Anyone who dared to rush in front of the Roman legions would be torn apart in an instant. Polo whistled the whistle that only his white clothes had. Shift change. It is different from the refueling tactics on the opposite side. After resisting a wave of attacks from the opponent, the Roman legion will change shifts. The soldiers in the first row will automatically go backwards, pass through the human wall, and go to the end to become the last row in order to recover their physical strength. Soldiers in the second platoon can immediately enter a new battle. Typical multi-stage attack tactics, so that the entire legion has maintained a strong combat effectiveness. Soon there was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood piled up in front of the Roman legion. Legionnaires suffered few casualties. The Roman legions crushed the Gaul tribes institutionally and tactically. Master Legion. The opponent has been attacking needlessly. Tribune Rex watched from behind Brian. This is the difference between civilization and system. Everyone in Gaul obviously has a better physique, but with the same strength, they will definitely not be opponents of the Legion. Brian sat on his horse and watched the battle ahead. The current Gaul is a tribal civilization, and most people are in the barbarian period. In the face of Rome's system and system, basically only have to be beaten. But in the later period of the Western Roman Empire, these barbarians gradually mastered the Roman system and system. Relying on the unique physical advantages of the Gauls, the Roman legion no longer maintained an advantage over them, but was at a disadvantage. That's right. Rex, how many people do you think they should have? Brian suddenly turned his head to look at Rex behind him. Master Legion, according to my judgment, there are at least 20,000 of them. Brian glanced at the north, then said seriously, although the opponent has 20,000 people, the Legion has only 5,000 people. But in the narrow terrain of the Red River Valley, the Roman Legion is like a plug here. Advertisement. Although the opponent has a huge advantage in numbers, it cannot be deployed. You can only invest hundreds of people at a time to fight hand-to-hand with the Roman Legion. As a result of hand-to-hand combat, often hundreds of lives cannot be exchanged for the life of a Roman soldier. The combination of the large shield and the Roman dagger almost explodes all weapons. Then we can end the battle before noon. In another 10 minutes, order the 2nd Brigade to replace the 1st Brigade. Over time, the Roman soldiers in the 1st Battalion will inevitably become exhausted, and the casualty rate will definitely increase by then. Therefore, substitutions can also be made between teams. It's different from Brian's laid-back, poised attitude. Towers on the opposite side has completely fallen into chaos at this moment. The wizard chattered beside him. Master Tails, there is still time to evacuate, otherwise, according to God's guidance, we will all die here forever. At the same time, a Gallic warrior came running from the front. Lord Tails, we have already killed nearly 2,000 people, and we haven't broken a single formation of the other side yet. Hearing this, Tails was furious instantly, grabbed the warrior by the neck, and lifted him up. What? At the cost of the lives of 2,000 warriors, no single formation of the opponent has been defeated. The formation placed on the front line usually refers to the young soldiers in the Roman Legion, and there are about 120 to 180 people. But after paying a high price, they still haven't broken through the opponent's one formation. This completely shattered Tails' dream of annihilating a Roman legion. As long as he uses the 20,000 people in his hands to annihilate the Roman legion on the opposite side, capture or kill their legion leader. If he can become famous in one battle, the next tribal leader must be a sure thing on the bench. You must be lazy, greedy for life, and afraid of death. Tails, with a strong hand, directly strangled the Gallic warrior to death. Tails has the title of the tribe's first warrior, and he is extremely confident in his personal understanding. He didn't believe that his warriors couldn't break through the shield wall of the Roman Legion. Call everyone to charge with me. Advertisement. In the side of Rome, the 2nd Brigade has just replaced, and the 1st Brigade is ahead. Covered in blood, Polo returned to Brian's side. It's really cool. I've never killed so much. In the battle just now, Polo killed at least 30 Gallic warriors. I said, Old Rex, have you seen clearly from behind? How many people are there? While wiping the blood off his body, Polo didn't forget to tease Rex beside him. A pair of blood-stained left hands pressed on Rex's plate armor. There are about 15,000 to 6,000 people on the other side. Wait a minute, what are they going to do? A large group of people suddenly appeared in front of the Roman legion. They swarmed, people crowded, people leaned on each other, shoulder to shoulder, back to back. The width of the entire Red River Valley can only accommodate hundreds of people charging at the same time. But now, thousands of people flocked all at once, and stampede incidents occurred from time to time, and those who fell would be trampled to death alive. Is the commander on the other side an idiot? The corners of Brian's lips curled up slightly, and he said jokingly, in this narrow field, facing the Roman legion, the best way is to evacuate as soon as possible, and fight the Roman legion in an open area. No matter how bad it is, we must concentrate our superior forces to see if we can penetrate the shield wall of the Roman legion. And this idiot commander used so many troops in such a narrow terrain. His troops can't be used at all. Kill yourself. Order to replace all young soldiers with reserve soldiers. Advance across the board. Reserve soldiers not only have rich combat experience, but also have much better equipment than young soldiers, and the main weapons in their hands are large shields and short spears. Don't squeeze me. Your knife hit my asterisk. Which idiot stabbed me? A large number of Gallic warriors squeezed together, swearing at each other. Chapter 38. Thousands of people crowded the place that could only accommodate hundreds of people. The Gallic warriors who were originally reluctant to advance were pushed to the front by the compatriots behind, and what awaited them were great shields and spears. Countless Gallic warriors did not rush up by themselves, but were squeezed by their compatriots. Some of them hit the large shield, while others hit the spear. They were still screaming until the moment they died. The huge squeezing force forced the front of the Roman legion to move back continuously. The centurion whistled sharply. Hold it. Absolutely don't back down. However, even the elite Roman legion could not withstand the attack regardless of casualties. And in this case, the Roman legion simply did not have time to make substitutions. In other words, the soldiers in the first row must either fight or fall. Haha, that's it. If you work harder, their defense line will be crushed by us. Tails stood on a boulder, holding a long sword in his hand, and said frantically, it's just that he didn't know that his crazy actions had already killed thousands of Gallic warriors. Master Brian, this is the first time I have seen such a crazy tactic. Rex stared dumbfounded at the crazy carnage ahead. Because there are too many Gauls, they basically can't use it. Some people have been stabbed into sieves by Roman soldiers, but because there is no space, they still stand in front of the shield, and the people behind kept pushing them. The 2nd Battalion has suffered a lot of casualties. It's time for Lord Brian to use them, Rex said anxiously from the side. Because the opponent used crowd tactics, basically exchanging lives for lives, the collapse of the 2nd Brigade was a matter of time. Okay, let them play. Brian originally planned to continue admiring the flesh mill. Advertisement, however, there are already a lot of casualties on the Roman side, and this battle must be resolved quickly. Soon, dozens of catapults were already behind. At the order of the centurion, 10 stone bombs were thrown towards the dense crowd. Each block weighed nearly 60 pounds, equivalent to 20 kilograms. Because it is a projectile, it hits the ground obliquely downward. Each stone bomb killed at least 5 or 6 people. The trebuchet. The opponent has a trebuchet. Some Gallic warriors even saw the stones hitting him alive, but he was surrounded by people and couldn't avoid it. His head was smashed by a stone. Each catapult volley could take the lives of hundreds of Gallic warriors. Casualties are secondary, and the shock to people's hearts is very terrifying. At this moment, these Gallic warriors were not rushing forward, but turned around and fled backwards. There is a Roman shield wall ahead, which is almost impossible to break through, and there are stones flying from time to time on the top of the head. Order the young soldiers in the 2nd row and the middle-aged soldiers in the 3rd row to throw all the spears in their hands, and order the auxiliary soldiers to shoot bows and arrows. From the very beginning, Brian had created an illusion for the other party. That was this Roman legion, which did not carry long-range attack weapons and could only fight in close combat. But in fact, Brian not only brought a bow and arrow, but even a catapult. All the long-range attack weapons in the world are pouring towards the dense Gaul warriors. In order to charge quickly, most of the Gauls didn't even carry shields. Of course, it's the same with or without the belt. When people are crowded, back to back, there is no room for them to raise their shields. The spearman centurion in the front row whistled and roared. All, advance. Now that there has been commotion on the other side, how could the centurion at the front give up this opportunity? And Brian, who was in the rear, said to the generals beside him, Advertisement, the overall situation is settled. When the two armies are fighting against each other, they can see what they can't do, and use it while they don't. The commander on the opposite side faced Brian, and it was not a star and a half. Under the blow of the two, the formation of the Gauls quickly collapsed. Instead of carrying out a kind of collapse, there are also their hearts. Countless people fled backwards. No escape. Tails grabbed a deserter and slashed him with a single blow. At the same time, more deserters ran past him. Of course, the Gallic warriors who were able to escape were only a small part of the back, and most of them were still trapped in the formation. The fight continued like this for another 2 hours. Tails led hundreds of his cronies and was besieged on a hillside. Listen to the Roman officer on the opposite side. I, Tars, son of the earth, the most powerful warrior in Tarago, who dares to fight me one-on-one? Tails stood on the hillside. At this moment, he was covered in blood, and the armor on his body had already disappeared. A body of explosive muscles is exposed. You Romans are nothing but hiding behind shields, weak cowards. And Brian was listening to Rex's simple report on the battle situation. Master Legion, we have lost at least one infantry brigade this time, and we haven't counted the wounded yet. Brian's heart was bleeding right now. In just one morning's battle, one of his 9 brigades had already been killed. Hearing the other parties yelling at this moment, Brian couldn't help feeling angry. Gallo barbarians. Today I will show you what despair is. Brian parted ways, striding forward. Brian has always been known in the Legion to be strong, but very few have seen him actually make a move. Chapter 39. Master Legion Commander. Master Legion Commander. Countless Roman soldiers tapped their shields with daggers, shouted the name of the legionary commander, and shouted. Unlike most Legion chiefs, their Legion chiefs can engage in one-on-one hand-to-hand combat with the opponent's leader. Brian broke away from the main line of the Roman Legion and walked to Tails alone. I, the 13th Legion of the Roman Republic. Acting Legion Commander Brian, accept your challenge. While speaking, Brian threw the exquisite shield on his left hand to the ground. As a show of fairness, he only took a one-handed sword. Master Brian. Master Brian. Seeing his Legion commander, he threw the shield aside. The shouts of the Roman soldiers behind them became louder. Brian. Acting Legion commander? Tails looked at the thin Roman officer in front of him with some doubts. Because he really doesn't look strong, even thinner than some strong Roman soldiers. While he was looking at Brian, Brian was also looking at the other party and clicked on his attributes. Name, Tails age, 27 years old status, eldest son of Tarago tribe strength, 95 constitution, 91 speed, 89 ambition. To be the leader of the Tarago tribe, his 3-dimensional attribute is not bad, stronger than most centurions. Before, Brian could clearly see that at least 30 Roman soldiers were killed by him. Monsters with 3 dimensions close to 90 can usually only be found in the arena. But this guy in front of him is obviously also a battle-tested monster. Well, yes. Without the appointment of the Senate, I can only be a temporary, acting head of the Legion. Brian honestly admitted that even his current agency was out of order. Of the nearly 30 legions of the Republic, none of them were veterans of the Roman Senate. To become a legionary leader, one must first become a senator of the Roman court and accept the appointment of the Senate. Of course, that's something later, and what Brian has to do now is to avenge the former Legion commander in order to gain the support of the Legion soldiers. Advertisement, thanks to you. The former Legion commander died under your arrows. So, none of you can get out alive today. While speaking, Brian slowly pulled out the king's sword from his waist. An extremely strong murderous aura gushed out from his body, and that murderous aura couldn't be wiped out by the mountains of corpses and seas of blood around him. It is the murderous aura carried by the unique kingly spirit. It turns out that Roman officer is the commander of your legion. It's a pity. 2 days earlier, Tars had brought nearly 20,000 Gallic warriors here and found Roman soldiers working together to find gold. Attacked the Roman soldiers before they formed a formation, and shot and wounded a senior officer of the opponent with a bow and arrow. It's just that I didn't expect it to be the army leader of the opponent. If he can be captured, or the head of the opponent's army leader can be taken back to the Gaul tribe. then the matter of him becoming the next leader must be a certainty. It's too late. And now there is another opportunity in front of him, the young acting head of the army. As long as he cut off his head and broke out, all the losses would be worth it. Although I really want to thank you, but today I must kill you in front of the two armies. All this time, Brian had killed the idea of Catius instead. However, due to the current situation and the regulations of the Roman Republic, no action has been taken. Well now, the former legionary leader Catius died under the arrows of the Gauls. Now Brian can justifiably take over the legion and lead the army to avenge it. Haha, Romans, since you dare to seek death by yourself today, then I will grant you. Tails looked up to the sky and laughed at his incomparable confidence in his own strength. And the opponent's legion commander was actually willing to fight him one-on-one. This is simply the will of God Bellinos. Never letting go of this opportunity, he grabbed the long sword in his hand and rushed towards Brian. Of course, he didn't notice that Brian also held a long sword that was different from the Roman dagger. Boom. Almost instantly, the two long swords collided. Tails even saw the sparks when the two long swords collided. At first, he was extremely confident, but the next moment, Tails found that his arms were shaking. A great force pressed against his arms. How can that be? How could the opponent's thin body have such great strength? Advertisement, it's not waiting for Tails to react. Brian, kicking him directly in the chest. Seeing this scene, the surrounding legionnaires couldn't help cheering. Did you know? You should have had a chance to escape, but you stayed. So today, I will give you the honor you deserve as a warrior. Brian took a step forward and swung the king's sword directly in his hand. It's not a Roman standard piercing action. Brush. A blood groove was opened on Tails' chest, and blood flowed out from the blood groove. Roar. Tails looked up to the sky and roared like a wounded beast. Then he rushed towards Brian. Useless. You are not my match, and Brian turned sideways, grasping the king's sword tightly with both hands and slashing. Brush. Brian directly cut off Tails' right hand holding the sword. Without waiting for the opponent to react, Brian swung his long sword again, slashing across the opponent's heels. Tails knelt on the ground because of his hamstring cut, and Brian stepped forward and grabbed his blonde hair. Then he used the king's sword on the opponent's throat. Roar. Master Brian. Master Brian. The soldiers of the Roman legion broke out in roars almost at the same time. It seems to be cheering for Brian, and it seems to be the pleasure after revenge. And Brian cut off Tatha's head directly with a strong hand. Hot blood spattered Brian's face. Brian raised his head coldly and said to the Roman soldiers in front of him, "Kill. Not one left." Roar. The Roman soldiers, who couldn't bear it any longer, rushed towards the only remaining Gauls like the wind. Chapter 40. More than 100 Gauls entrenched on the high ground were quickly eliminated by the legion, and Brian tossed Tails' head aside. Catius, I have avenged you, so you can go with peace of mind. The 13th Legion is mine. 3 p.m. The 13th Legion held the northern entrance of the Red River Valley and rested here. The Legion Tribune is reporting to Brian. Master Brian, after a brief count, we killed a total of 13,421 Gauls this time. For this number, Brian is still very satisfied. The entire Red River Valley has been covered with corpses, and the small river has been dyed red. What about our casualties? Asked Brian. Participated in several brigades. The total number of deaths was 439. 127 were seriously injured, and 654 were slightly injured. In the face of the death toll of the Gauls, these casualties seem a little insignificant. Brian wasn't feeling well, plus a brigade that Catius lost before. In other words, now the Legion can only use the strength of 7 brigades. The Gaul tribe on the opposite side has a population of more than 200,000. Although they killed 13,000 people today, the basic number is still there. Sure enough, it is still a bit far-fetched to use this legion to shake such a large tribe with such a population. Rex, among all the tribunes of the legion, you are the wisest. What do you think of the current situation? Brian wanted to hear the opinion of the Legion Tribune. Originally, Rex would definitely oppose sending troops to Gaul, but after all, the head of the Legion died at the hands of the Gauls, and this revenge had to be avenged. But today, after a whole morning of fierce fighting, the 13th Legion killed 13,000 Gauls and killed the culprit of the incident. Master Brian, although I understand your feelings very well, if we go out of the Red River Valley, there is a very high chance that we will be eaten by each other. Today, Rex has seen the madness of the Gallic tribes, but often relying on his strong physique, he rushed up with a battle axe in hand. If it were not for the limited terrain, they would not be able to deploy, and the Legion's casualties would be even greater. Advertisement, more importantly, thousands of Gauls have fled back to the tribe today, and they must have received the news in advance to guard against the 13th Legion. If the 13th Legion hastily left the Red River Valley and entered the open terrain at this time, it is very likely that they will be besieged by the opponent's heavy troops. This is also the reason why Brian ordered to rest on the spot and did not attack rashly. The Republic can bear the loss of several brigades of the 13th Legion, or even be disabled, but if the 13th Legion is wiped out, the Eagle flag will be taken away. Even if Brian came from a famous Roman family, he would surely be crucified. Right now, we need information. Send out scouts. Take a look at the movement of the Talago tribe on the opposite side. Rex looked up at Brian and said, "What we need now is not an attack, but intelligence." If he encounters the army of Gaul tribes, Brian can indeed rely on this person to fight bravely out of the encirclement. But then his political future in Rome would be over. Now that he has killed 13,000 people of the other party, he will not stop doing one thing and kill the other party's entire tribe. Now what Brian needs is intelligence. Unlike the Roman legion that was in a meeting, the Tarago tribe was already in a mess. The elders in the tribe, and the two children of Roctors, the eldest daughter Antebella, and the second son Roxter. They all surround Roctor's hospital bed. At this moment, Roctors, the leader of the tribe, was dying of illness. "Have the Romans from the south come calling?" Roctors said weakly. "Yes, sir, your..." An elder was about to say that your son was killed in battle, but he was stopped by his companions. Ahem. Old Roctors wanted to say a few words, but coughed violently again. With his current physical condition, it is impossible to hold meetings and discussions at all. "My 3 children. Whoever can help the tribe through the New Year's Eve will be my heir." Ahem. After Roctors finished speaking, he fell into silence. "Okay, everyone get out. Let's go to the tent outside and talk." Advertisement, the great elder of the tribe, said to the crowd. Soon a group of elders, and the 2 nieces in their hands, came to another tent. "What's going on? Why did the Roman legion suddenly advance?" One of the elders asked suspiciously. After all, the Roman legions had been stationed there for years without incident, and this attack came almost without warning. Of course, this is just the elders' wishful thinking. According to the warrior who escaped earlier, the day before yesterday, Tais secretly sucked a Roman army of 500 people. During this raid, he killed the army leader on the opposite side, and the great elder, who was familiar with the cause and effect of the matter, said slowly. So the Roman legion on the opposite side counterattacked at all costs and killed Tais directly. Who killed Tais? You must know that Tais is the #1 warrior in our tribe. According to the family members who escaped before, Tais was killed in a one-on-one fight with one of the opponent's generals, and all the elders present gasped when they heard the words. Everyone knows that Tails is more than 1.9 meters tall and has infinite strength. He is the strongest warrior in the entire tribe. Who is that officer? Antebella seemed to have thought of something, so she hurriedly asked. It's not clear yet. The clansman was too far away to see clearly, but I can be sure that the other party is a Roman officer wearing a red tasseled crown. And what about the Roman legions now? Roxter asked aside. Of course, this is also what everyone present should care about. The era of the Roman legions was a nightmare for the entire Mediterranean. With the same strength, no one can defeat the Roman legion except the famous General Hannibal. They are currently stationed at the mouth of the Red River Valley. Roxter and Antebella looked at each other and said, "We need information now." Chapter 41. 3 days later, a solid barrier was established from the northern part of the Red River Valley. And stationed here is the elite 13th Legion of Rome. In front of Brian were a few Gauls captured by Rex. Polo waved the leather whip in his hand heartily. Brian admired the scene in front of him with great interest. Snapped, "Say it. What deployments and special things have your tribe done recently?" Polo waved his leather whip, sweating profusely, and the Gauls in front of him were all torn from flesh and blood. But these Gauls were very determined. From the beginning to the present, except for 1 or 2 wailings, they have not made a sound. Polo, you won't get anything useful out of the test like this. Brian wasn't going to be a few more captives, wasting time. These prisoners were just caught by Rex from the outside in the morning, and they were very stubborn. Master Legion, please give me a little more time. I will definitely find out by torture. Please report what you want. Brian shook his head and said, "Although you have brute force, Polo, you are not good at torture. Let me teach you now." Brian stepped forward and drew the short sword from Rex's waist. grabbed a Gaul's blonde hair with one hand. Say, what's your name? And the Gaul raised his cheeks very stubbornly. Pooh. In the next second, Brian directly stabbed the Roman dagger into his chest. All the officers present couldn't help but gasp. This is their acting Legionnaire, the murderous Roman devil. From the start of the Legion to here, all the prisoners captured by the Legion were all beheaded. These prisoners have been kept until now because they want to torture important information. May I have your name? And Brian moved on to the next Gaul. The Gaul trembled as he saw his companion slain aside. Advertisement, aye? But before he could finish his sentence, Brian had already slashed his throat with a Roman short sword. Say it so slowly, don't say it. Brian wiped the blood from the Roman dirk lightly with a handkerchief. However, since the handkerchief is also made of linen, the blood-sucking effect is average. There are still traces of blood on the Roman short sword. Brian walked up to the third Gaul. The villain's name is Thorsta. Please don't kill me. But before he finished speaking, Brian slashed at his neck with a sword. Although the Roman short sword is not good at slashing, it can perform miracles under great force. The Gaul named Torstad was decapitated in an instant. Really? I answered you before I asked you. Brian picked up the Roman short sword and examined it carefully. Due to the violent slashing action just now, many scratches and wrinkles have appeared on one side of the blade. Sure enough, the Roman dagger is better at stabbing straight. If the number of chops is too high, the Roman dagger will break directly. And Brian walked up to the fourth Gaul and grabbed his hair. At this moment, the Gaul had begun to tremble. May I have your name? Almost instantly, the Gaul replied with rocket speed. Little man, Katas. Very good. The answer is neither too fast nor too slow. I have a few questions to ask you next. If you don't satisfy me, you will find that death will be a kind of relief. Brian lifted the Gaul up and tossed it aside. Do you know this guy? Brian took out a wooden box. Inside the wooden box was the head of Tails. Since Catius died at the hands of this person, it is natural to take this person's head back, firstly to the Senate, and secondly to give an explanation to the family of Catius. Tails's head has been specially processed and has been made into a specimen. This is Tais, son of the earth, son of the chief. Seeing the head of Tars, the Gaul, Katas, became even more frightened. You must know that Tais is known as the son of the earth and the strongest warrior in the tribe. Advertisement. It seems that the rumor a few days ago is true. It is said that the son of the earth was killed by a Roman officer. Katas thought it was a joke, because a brave man like Tais is almost a symbol of invincibility in the tribe, and it is impossible to die in battle. Very good. I want to know, what is the current situation of your tribe? Brian felt that it was almost done and put the wooden box aside. Because of your arrival, the whole tribe is panicking now, and many people have gone to the north to avoid disaster with their old and young looks. Only the able-bodied man remained. There is also the leader's second son, Rexter, who is going to gather the men in the clan to avenge his big brother. Oh, then you can use this Rexter. How many people has he gathered? Currently, there are 30,000 to 40,000 people around him. Katas replied carefully, for fear that a Roman officer in front of him would not be offended. He kills without blinking an eye. So your leader has any other children? Brian thought of the Antabella he had put back and didn't know what was going on now. The leader also has a daughter, Miss Antabella, but his supporters are very few, only about 10,000. Brian couldn't help frowning slightly. Antabella is really not a fuel-efficient lamp. In this world where men are superior to women, she actually has 10,000 supporters. Even if Brian had him now, there were only close to 5,000 people. Twice as many as Brian's men, but there is a huge gap in quality. So, where is your leader, Rokters? There has been no news of the leader for 2 days, and everyone is rumoring that the leader is dead. Antabella had told Brian earlier that her father would die soon. The old guy should be dying soon. Then what about the rest of your tribe? Are there any elders or something like that? They said they have no supporters. Tarago was a large tribe with a population of more than 200,000 5 years ago. However, the data reported by this Gaul is somewhat wrong. Nearly 20,000 people in the tribe are supporters of the Great Elder. Hearing the news, the corners of Brian's mouth twitched slightly. This is much more interesting. The old leader is about to die, and the tribe is about to fall apart. Obviously, they all have their eyes on the position of the leader of the tribe, and now they dare not act rashly, let alone send troops to harass Brian. Chapter 42. That's all I know. Don't kill me. Seeing that Brian was lost in thought, Katas said fearfully from the side. Afraid that Brian would kill him with a sword. Brian ignored him and looked at Lucius, the tribune of the Legion. How's the Lucius gold mine arrangement going? After killing Tails 3 days ago, Brian ordered Lucius to transport the 1,000 slaves and mining equipment up, and the situation is just as Brian guessed. Although Brian slaughtered a bunch of Gauls and killed the leader's son, however, due to internal problems within the tribe, it was impossible for them to take the initiative to attack the Roman legion in a short period of time. And Brian didn't have enough strength to push down this large tribe with a population of 200,000. Simply confronting here, it is better to mind your own industry. Master Brian, all the equipment has been installed, and it can now operate normally. Brian turned to Katas and said, "Congratulations, I don't have to kill you. From now on, you are my slave. Dig mines for me until you die." Soon Kaido's was taken down, along with the rest of the Gauls. Their fate is only different mining until death. Rex, what do we do next? One of Brian's habits is to let Polo do everything. But when in doubt, ask Rex. Master Brian, according to the information provided by the Gaul just now, the Tarago tribe has split into multiple factions. If we attack rashly, the opponent will twist into a force. Brian nodded, motioning for the other party to continue learning. The tribe on the opposite side must have at least 50,000 to 60,000 people who can use it. It is 10 times the number of our legion. Rex paused. Brian knew that often at this time he was going to tell the truth, and these truths were not pleasant. Advertisement. Now we only have 7 brigades. I think it is very difficult to defeat the Gauls with the current strength. Even if we succeed in defeating them, it will be a miserable victory. Brian nodded, although he is now the acting head of the Legion in name. But if you want to become the real head of the Legion, you must get the nod of the Senate. If the 13th Legion suffered too many casualties under his command, Brian would have no chance of being a Legion commander. The Gaul just now provided a very important piece of information, that is, the leader of the opponent is dying. After the death of the other party's leader, the Tarago tribe is bound to fall apart, and that's our chance. The most important thing for us right now is to defend the Red River Valley and try to grab as much wealth as possible. Clap. Brian reached out and clapped his hands. Right now, what Rex said was indeed the safest course of action, but it couldn't be Brian saying it first. As expected of the wise Rex, the analysis is very good. Right now, we will stay here first, and then mine with peace of mind. Everyone present will have a share. Yes, yes. Of course, the last sentence is what counts. Brian has always adhered to the theory of sexual evil, believing that human nature is greedy. Even the well-documented Roman legions are the same. All along, Brian took out a small part of Lu's wealth and distributed it to his subordinates. Therefore, Brian has a very high prestige in the army. After Cadius died, he took over the entire army as a matter of course. Late at night, a thin figure suddenly walked up to the outpost garrisoned by the Roman legion. Who? The sentinels immediately spotted each other. Then a pretty female voice came. I am an envoy from the Gaul tribe. I want to see your general. Advertisement. When they heard that they were coming from the opposite side, the sentries did not dare to neglect. Soon the woman was taken to Brian's account. Antebella is actually you. Brian was surprised to find that the Gaul woman in front of him turned out to be Antebella, who had a one-night stand with him. Of course it is me. Antebella, taking off her hood, sat unceremoniously across the table from Brian and began to eat the food on the table. You came late at night. Did you miss me? Brian snorted softly and looked at the woman in front of him. This very ambitious woman must have his purpose in visiting late at night. Long time no see. I miss General Brian very much. Antebella picked up the king's sword on Brian's table by the way, and said with joy, the general also happens to have a lot of things I want to ask you. Brian came to Antebella's side and gently raised her chin with his index finger. Tell me quickly, what news did you bring me? Antebella's eyes, like water, fixed on Brian. Then tell me, are you the current supreme commander of the Legion? Antebella did not answer, but instead asked, thanks to you, your eldest brother shot my immediate superior, the head of the 13th Legion, with an arrow. Now I have the final say on the entire Legion. Brian sat back down again and poured himself a glass of water. A pair of eagle-like eyes looked at Antebella. Antebella was wearing a coarse sackcloth on the outside and a gauze dress on the inside, outlining her figure perfectly. Tell me, what good news did you bring me today? Want to know? I don't know, General Brian. Do you have any bargaining chips in your hands that satisfy me? Antebella looked at Brian with admiration. The Roman general in front of him was fundamentally different from their tribal Gallic warriors. Chapter 43. Brian, when will your legion advance? Who knows? Maybe next month or tomorrow I'll go back and call, Brian said half-jokingly. You're lying again. If you could make it through, you would have done it long ago. Antebella smiled. Act like I don't believe you. You don't believe me. Brian was impatient with Antebella's opinion. In the bloody battle in the Red River Valley a few days ago, although you defeated Ties and killed him, you also lost a lot of troops. At that time, Tails only had 20,000 people in his hands. You must have paid a lot to defeat him. Now you have no confidence to continue the attack. Antebella smiled triumphantly. Presumably the Roman legion also paid a lot of price. He didn't believe that the guy in front of him led the legion really that powerful. That's right. I'm going to kill your big brother, and I paid the price of 1,000 casualties. Now I only have 7 infantry brigades in my hands. I heard that you have more people in your hands than me now. Brian simply told Antebella about the loss. What? You only had 1,000 casualties? Antebella looked at Brian in surprise. After a few days of fighting, only about 5,000 people fled back that day, and after that, some people discussed it one after another. According to Antebella's analysis, the tribal side lost at least 12,000 people. As for Rome, at least 2,000 to 3,000 casualties will be paid. Even if the Roman legion is fully formed, there are only 5,000 or 6,000 people. If there are 2,000 to 3,000 casualties, it means that half of the people have lost their combat effectiveness. Now Brian tells him the casualties were only 1,000. Only then did Antebella realize the terror of the Roman legions. Advertisement: the exchange ratio between the two parties is too great. Let me tell you the truth. In this war, you lost 13,000 people, while our side only had 465 people died. Of course, some people were seriously injured in the past few days, and some people died one after another. This is also something that gives Brian a headache. In view of the level of medical treatment in this era, many seriously injured soldiers can only die slowly. Okay, now you can tell me why you came. Brian knew that this extremely ambitious woman would not risk coming to him if she had nothing to do. My father Roctors is dying. You said last month that he was going to die. Isn't he dead now? Yes, the wizard of the tribe did say last month that he could not see the sun this month, but it has been cloudy and rainy these days. Forehead. Indeed. And his physical condition is getting worse and worse. Now he has a high fever and can't speak. The wizard said that it will only take a day or two. While speaking, Antebella was a little nervous, and Brian could clearly feel the other person's heartbeat speeding up. And now I need your help. I need you to help me kill Rexter and the Great Elder. Hearing Antebella's proposal, Brian couldn't help being amused. If he didn't have Shinwei and the Gauls in the morning, he might have agreed to her immediately. The strength of Rexter and the Great Elder, he said, was 50,000 to 60,000 people. With Brian's current strength, it is impossible to win them. Sorry, I don't plan to use the power of a legion until new soldiers are added. Brian knew very well, whether it was the loss of a cohort by the previous legion master, or the 1,000 casualties at his hands. These are the losses of the army's combat power. I'm not asking you to confront them head-on, but to kill them in the tribal competition. Antebella had a bold idea. Hiss. Even Brian gasped after that. Advertisement: this woman is really poisonous. In order to seize power, she did not hesitate to unite with the Romans. Ding dong. Please choose. 1. Negate Antebella's proposal and drive him out, rewarding him with 100 points. 2. Negate Antebella's proposal and let him go to the mine-to-mine, rewarding 500 points. 3. After agreeing to Anthera's proposal, you will get a random exchange voucher after the matter is successful. Random exchange coupon. After using it, you can randomly get an item in the exchange list. A random exchange coupon is indeed very powerful. But the risk was too high. Brian didn't answer immediately, but asked in a concentrated voice. What benefits can I get? Brian is a realist with the best interests at heart. It is impossible to help him without a bottom line, especially the woman in front of him. What if I become the leader of the tribe? How about we rule the tribe together? Brian snorted softly. I'm not interested in ruling your tribe. I need slaves, a lot of slaves, at least 20,000 slaves. The price of slaves is now in the limelight. If more than 20,000 slaves can be captured, the military expenditure for a year can be solved. Each slave can be sold for 4 gold coins. If there are 20,000 slaves, it is exactly 80,000 gold coins, which is barely enough for the Legion to spend for a year. Antebella was lost in thought. If she can successfully become the leader, many people in the tribe will definitely oppose him, and these people can be handed over to Brian. After thinking for a long time, Antebella nodded to Brian and said, "Okay, as long as I become the leader, I will give you 20,000 slaves." "Okay, no problem, deal, Miss Annabella." While talking, Brian thought of another thing. If he completes this task, he can have a lot of money. Chapter 44. Brian, what's up with your hair and eyes? Antebella looked at Brian with little confidence. Because Brian is a pure Roman with black hair and black eyes. Brian at the moment is blonde and blue-eyed. It's a secret. Brian relaxes. Only in the morning, he and Antebella, after a storm, since they chose to help her, they naturally had to risk their lives. So Brian redeemed the hair dye and contact lenses in the system. However, these two items were extremely expensive, costing Brian 500 points. Brian was poor again. "If I didn't know that you were a Roman officer, I would have thought you were a Gaul." Antebella looked at Brian with beautiful eyes. Compared with the image of a Roman officer, Antebella preferred the current Brian. With blonde hair and blue eyes, wearing Gaul armor and a long sword at his waist, he looks like a Gaul warrior. "By the way, since you have this method, why don't you bring your army? It would be good to bring at least one formation," Antebella said doubtfully. "Becoming like this requires a very high price, and now I can't make more people like me. Although it cost a high price of 500 points, the amount of hair dye is not a lot, and it's easy to cheat with other people. Then how do you want me to help you?" Although he promised to help him, Brian was alone after all. Even Brian is thinking now, maybe he will die in the Gaul tribe. However, this is a crazy gamble. If he wins, then he will have enough capital to win the position of Legion commander. Now if Brian doesn't make some achievements, the Senate will soon send another Legion commander. The leader of the tribe is also my father. He once made a condition for the successor of the tribe, that is, whoever can let you withdraw will become the leader of the tribe. Advertisement. Antebella smiled happily at Brian, and Brian moved his fingers slightly, ready to touch the long sword at his waist at any time. "But don't worry, even if I can get you to withdraw, I'm afraid I won't be able to get the position of leader." Brian nodded meaningfully. The struggle for power has always been life and death. It is absolutely impossible to be a gentleman. More importantly, with my strength, it is impossible to defeat you. If they detect any clues, I will be defeated. Collaboration with the Romans was a felony in Gaul. Especially for women, committing the felony of colluding with Rome is definitely not just a fluke. "Then do you think I can help you win the position of leader by myself?" Brian looked at the woman in front of him with some regret. If she was a man, she would definitely be a hero. "Of course. Although my father's condition is to defeat the Roman legion, they can become the leader. But they are not so stupid. No one will challenge the Roman legion. In this era, the Roman legions were a symbol of invincibility. Few were able to defeat the Roman legions in comparable numbers. For these Gaul barbarians, it is simply hell-level difficulty. After my father's death, the tribe's high-level leaders will hold a warrior competition, and the winner will become the leader." When Antebella said this, she glanced directly at Brian. He was so satisfied with the man in front of him. Whether it was his appearance or his talent, he was the type she liked. The only pity is that he is not Gaul. "So you found me?" "Yes. What about my identity?" "It is impossible to allow a person who has no reason to participate in the tribal warrior competition. Hero from the northern tribes. My husband. Stormblade. Bryant." Advertisement. "How is it? Honey, do you like my new name for you?" Antebella said, almost as if asking for credit. "Not bad. You have a creative talent." At the same time, the Tarago tribe Rexter is discussing with their think tanks. "My father, the great Tarago eagle, is about to fall. Now that Ties is dead, the position of leader must be mine. Originally the best candidate for the leader was Tars, but Tars rashly attacked the Roman legion, suffered revenge from the Roman legion, and almost wiped out the entire army. Rexter has the advantage of being a fisherman in the rear, and strengthens the remaining forces of Tails. Master Rexter, what you should be most worried about now is the Great Elder. The people in his hands are the most heroic warriors in our tribe. Long ago, Rexter prepared to take the tribal leader by force. Now Tails' death has created conditions for him. They really have to defend, but the most important thing right now is that we should prepare for the warriors' competition after the leader dies," Rexter said confidently from the side. The son of the Gallic Eagle, his force is naturally not bad. Although he is not as good as Tails, he has surpassed most of them. If there is a warrior competition, there is currently no one who will be the opponent of Lord Rexter. Wait a minute, you forget. Miss Annabella is also eligible to participate, and her husband is also eligible to participate. Hearing this, Rexter smiled lightly, and clapped his hands together. Slap! I saw a giant man walking in from outside the tent. This giant man is nearly 2.3 meters tall and holds a giant axe. Vastana, the strongest strongman in Gaul in history, and also my cousin. He will represent me in the competition that day. No one is his opponent. Chapter 45. Vastana. Wasn't he exiled for cannibalism? Haha. Vastana, I allow you to eat all the people who are defeated by you. Faced with everyone's doubts, Rexter actually laughed out loud. Compared to being the leader of a tribe, cannibalism is a trivial matter. Thank you, cousin. I like the taste of human flesh the most. The Titan, who is 2.3 meters tall, showed a ferocious smile, especially the sawtooth in his mouth, which made people feel chilling. Brian came to the Tarago tribe together with Antebella. This place was different from the small tribes Brian had wiped out before. Its core area has formed the prototype of the town. Many people trade here. Miss Antebella. And when those ordinary people saw Otabella, they saluted one after another. It seems that this guy is quite popular here. Brian thought behind him. At this moment, a long-haired young man in armor appeared in front of Antebella. Antebella visibly became vigilant. Antebella, no wonder I haven't seen you for a day, so I want to hook up with wild men. There are other small tribes scattered around the Tarago tribe. My wise second brother, you are really smart. I did go to the wild man. Look, this is my chosen husband, Stormblade, Bryant, a warrior from the northern tribe. Antebella graciously admitted and directly introduced Brian to the people around him. Brian also puffed out his chest for an excuse, holding the hilt of the king's sword tightly with his left hand. A legendary brave man. Haha, as expected of my sister, she actually found a titled warrior. Rexter couldn't help smiling. Only the number one warrior in the tribe can have a title. Before the tribe's first warrior was Ties, known as the Son of the Earth, and Antebella Brian's title is Stormblade. But look at how thin he is. His tribe should be a small tribe with hundreds of people. Rexter looked at Brian and said sarcastically, advertisement at the moment, Brian is blonde and nearly 1.8 meters tall, with his well-proportioned figure. In the Gaul tribe full of Hercules, it looks like a vase. My tribe is not very big, only 5,000 people. I am the strongest there. Brian took a step forward, and a strong, murderous aura gushed out of him. As for the Gauls watching the battle, although they often killed people, they were nothing compared to Brian. This uncomfortable, murderous aura. God knows how many people he killed. A small tribe with a population of 5,000. Rexter was first suppressed by Brian's murderous aura, and then he recovered after a long time, and said mockingly. Of course, he didn't know that the tribe of 5,000 people that Brian was talking about was a full Roman legion. Rexter didn't dare to look directly at Brian, but instead looked at Antebella. A small tribe of 5,000 people can't help your sister. Why don't you rely on me? When I become the leader, I will personally preside over your wedding. Thank you for your kindness, but I won't give up until then. Antebella took Brian's arm and walked inside. I can kill him now if you want. And Brian whispered in front of Antebella. Brian checked just now, Rexter's three-dimensional property. Strength 91, physique 85, speed 89. Such data are far beyond ordinary people. It is extremely rare even among Gallic tribes. But Brian was confident that he could kill him in 3 strokes. Not yet. If you do something, it will inevitably cause chaos, and the elders will definitely target us. Annabella was trying to reassure Brian. Fearing Brian, he killed Rexter on impulse. Okay, but Rexter is dead. Okay, I'll take you to meet my father first. Soon, Antebella took Brian to her father's residence. Under Brian's strong request, Antebella surrounded the old chief's residence with 500 people who would definitely make him. Miss, you are finally here. The leader has been chanting your name. Take care of me, said the servant in his hand. Advertisement, you all go down. Don't approach without Antebella's order. Brian ordered coldly to the servant. Miss? The servant looked at Antebella suspiciously. He's my husband, and what he says is what I say. Get down, you all. It's Miss. Soon Brian and Antebella came to the room of the tribal leader Roctors. The dim yellow eyes of Roctors actually shone with a ray of light when they saw Brian. He is. A whimpering sound came from his mouth. Antebella took a step forward and directly grabbed his hand and said, She is the husband my daughter is looking for. Husband? His identity is... The old leader whimpered again. If he didn't listen carefully, he wouldn't understand what he said at all. Let me tell him. Brian, acting commander of the 13th Roman Legion. Brian didn't shy away from revealing his identity. Brian Yu. Although Roctors was seriously ill, he could hear some words very clearly. The 13th Legion of Rome. Legion commander. Cough cough. Hearing this, the old leader began to cough violently. Antabella's constant appeasement was of no avail. Your tribe has been conquered. Now I want you to see your tribe with your own eyes, and I will send you to a prison cart and sell them. Seeing the other's reaction violently, Brian provoked him further. Cough cough. At the last heavy cough, the old leader, Roctors, had a trace of blood, and then passed out. Antabella contacted other qualified inheritors and told them about the eagles of the tribe that Roctors summoned them. Antabella instantly understood Brian's thoughts and couldn't help but gasp. Brian intends to kill anyone who opposes Antabella here. Sure enough, none of the people who could become the head of the Roman Legion was a simple role. Chapter 46. Soon the news that the leader Roctors was about to die spread throughout the tribe again. Of course, this is nothing new. Similar news comes frequently these days. After all, the old chief had been ill for 2 months. But this time there were a lot of people running 4 times. It seems that this time is true. You're crazy. Let it be known that you're a Roman, and it's over. Antabella looked at Brian and complained. According to Brian's request, those people have been invited. But if after the meeting, the old leader wakes up and says that Brian is a Roman, it will be really cool. Brian turned to look at the old chief, Roctors. This guy spit out a mouthful of blood just now, but now he has recovered. That being said, there is indeed a possibility of waking up. Thinking of this, Brian slowly extended his right hand to him. What are you going to do? It was too late for Antabella to stop it. Brian had a firm grip on Roctor's neck. Either I strangle him now, or he wakes up later, and we're all screwed. Antabella reached up and grabbed Brian's other arm, trying to pull Brian aside. You cannot do that. But Antabella's power was limited after all, and it was impossible to move Brian at all. It's about this time. It's hard for you to become the leader of the tribe with your appearance. Brian tossed Antabella aside with a wave of his hand. Then use your hands hard. The old leader struggled briefly for nearly a minute before he lost his breath. Okay, now order your people to ambush, whether it's your big brother or the elder. As soon as they arrive, kill them. Brian also made a symbolic grooming for Roctors. It made him look very peaceful. Advertisement. Brian, you are a devil. Antabella's cheeks were covered with 2 lines of hot tears. Now that you've made a deal with the devil, please go ahead and start crying. And Brian stepped aside, half kneeling aside in Gaulish etiquette. The group of elders led by the great elder rushed over when they heard that the leader was really dying this time. Just outside the leader's courtyard, he heard Antabella's cry. The crying was loud, and the voice was full of sadness and unyielding, and there was even some reluctance and guilt for relatives. But the great elder, his first thought at this moment was to seize power. Of course, according to the rules of the tribe, only the direct blood relatives of the leader can become the next leader. But the great elder, as the younger brother of the current leader, if all the children of the leader die, he can also inherit the position of the leader of the tribe. Soon the great elder came to the room with more than 10 elders, met Antabella and a strange man. At this moment, Antabella was sobbing, nestling in the arms of the young man. The elder directly stepped forward to check Rockel's situation. At this moment, Antabella was still unwilling to leave, but was forced out by Brian. All around here are people from Antabella. Brian said to the heads of the group of people, no matter who comes out of it later, they will be killed directly. Before Antabella mobilized a large number of people here in the name of protecting the leader. The head of this group of people is a giant bald man with a height of 1.9 meters. The giant man looked at Antabella. His words. That's what I mean. No matter who comes out of the room later, kill him. Antabella wiped away her tears, then said coldly. At this moment, the great elder put his finger on Roctor's carotid artery, and the pulse had already disappeared. However, at this moment, the great elder found that there was a handprint bruise on Roctor's neck. Although it was not obvious, it was still visible. Moreover, Roctor's throat has been broken, and it is obvious that he died unexpectedly. The great elder looked back at Antabella. Advertisement. At this moment, Antabella and the young man were found to have disappeared. It was Antabella who killed the leader, and immediately notify the clansmen. All of them are wanted by Antabella. Yes, great elder. An elder nodded and said yes and walked out. However, just after he left the room, there was a deadly voice. Hear the sound of death. The great elder and others rushed out immediately, only to find that the place was surrounded by a group of Gallic warriors. Only at this moment did the Great Elder realize that this pair of Gallic warriors were absolutely loyal to Antabella. Antabella, how dare you kill? When the Great Elder saw this scene, he immediately understood that this was Antabella's trap. Do not. It should be the man next to Antabella. The Gauls have always been straightforward and rarely use intrigue. But before he finished speaking, a sharp arrow pierced his chest. You talk too much. Go to hell. It's good for everyone. Brian put down the bow and arrow in his hand. For a long time, unlike other Romans who practiced throwing, Brian also practiced direct shooting. At this moment, it was Brian's direct shot that killed the Great Elder with one blow. Go. Kill them all. Leave no one behind. For every person killed, Miss Antabella will reward him with 10 pounds of gold. At first, these Gallic warriors hesitated. After all, the targets they want to kill are the elders of the tribe. But after Brian offered a sky-high price of 10 pounds of gold, these Gallic warriors rushed towards the elders. At this moment, in their eyes, there are no elders of the tribe. They are clearly heavy gold. These pampered tribal elders were quickly killed by those who chopped melons and vegetables. Antabella turned to look at Brian, who was on the side. Brian, you are a devil. Chapter 47. Antabella looked at the corpse of a local elder. This Brian is nothing short of a devil. But Antabella had to admire Brian's methods. He directly strangled the tribal leader and then slaughtered all the elders. This kind of cruel way of fighting cannot be done by a pure Gaul. No wonder this guy can be the head of the army at such a young age. Miss Antabella, correct a problem. I am not a devil. Those devils are just my subordinates. Brian slung the bow and arrows over his back. Also, now is not the time to sigh. Hurry up and clean up these corpses and wait for Rexter's arrival. Now, as long as these leaders are killed, the remaining people will be much easier. After another 10 minutes, everything in the yard was tidied up. Rexter arrived late with more than 100 people. Sister, how is father? Antabella Shauran replied. Father has passed away. He is in the room. Go in and see her for the last time. Rexter's room can only accommodate a dozen or so people at most. That is to say, only a fraction of the more than 100 people brought by Rexter can enter. At this moment, someone saw the blood on the swords of the surrounding Gallic warriors. Master Rexter, is there a problem here? Almost instantly, all drew their weapons. Do it, Brian yelled. Then he drew the sword of the king and walked towards Rexter. Just kill him and it's over. Those Gallic warriors who had fought before no longer have any scruples at this moment. Killing an elder is also killing, and killing Rexter is also killing. The two groups fought together in an instant. The Gauls had a much more concealed way of fighting, and were more adept at using axes than long swords. Only the strength of the axes is conducive to slashing. Use their power to the fullest. Brian knocked a Gallic warrior in front of him to the ground with his sword. Any Gaul who came within 3 meters of Brian would kill him without hesitation. Bryant. Stormblade. At this moment, Rexter saw that he was walking slowly with a long sword in his hand, but he couldn't come. Finally realized the horror of the other party. His sister found this man to kill him. Advertisement, that's right. Die. It's your honor to die by my sword, boom. Soon the long swords of the two collided. But Rexter obviously felt a lot of effort. Although the opponent's figure looked thinner than him, his strength was surprisingly poor. How much benefit does my sister give you? How about I give you a double share to work for me? After several rounds, Rexter retreated steadily. Antabella, what you can give me, you can't give. Brian snorted coldly and slashed with his sword again. This sword just hit Rexter's shoulder. Instantly, the king's sword pierced Rexter's armor immediately. Blood poured out. Rexter's right hand is useless. Now you can go on the road. Report to Hades. Brian raised the king's sword in his hand, ready to give him the final blow. Vastana. At this moment, a huge steel axe slashed at Brian. Brian quickly dodged to avoid the fatal blow. I saw a giant man with a height of 2.3 meters and holding a sharp axe appearing beside Rexter. How dare you hurt my cousin? I'll hack you to death. Without any explanation, the giant man held a huge axe and slashed towards Brian. Boom. Brian quickly swung the king's sword in his hand to parry. The king's sword and giant axe collided together, and fierce sparks erupted. However, with this blow, Brian actually took a few steps backwards. How does this guy have so much power? Brian instantly clicked on the other party's attributes. Name was Tana. Age 24. Occupation Berserker. Strength 110. Constitution 105 speed. 79 The opponent's strength and physique exceeded 100. Advertisement, and especially the data of strength, is much higher than that of Brian. This was the first time Brian had seen someone surpass him in strength. Was Tana killed him? You can eat his meat today, Rexter said while clutching the wound on his shoulder. Roar. Was Tana even yelled up to the sky. His roar was so loud that the surrounding Gauls who were fighting each other stopped. Although there are many people here in Antebellum, they are not the elite of the tribe. Rexter only has more than 100 people, but each of them is a Gallic warrior who has experienced many battles. For a while, the two gangs fought together, and it was hard to distinguish between them. After Wastana's roar, the two groups of people stopped one after another. Very good. That's it. Rexter couldn't help saying, overjoyed upon seeing this. Throughout the tribe, Vastana is a monster. The kind of monster that no one can beat. Bryant. Kill that monster. And Tabula also realized that the situation was not good at this moment. Now there's no one against Wastana except Brian. If Vastana cannot be killed, the people around Antebellum are likely to fall to Rexter. Don't worry, this big guy is handed over to me. Brian rushed forward with a run-up. Haha, kid come up to die. Vastana raised his giant axe and slashed at Brian. Although his first two attributes crush Brian, his speed is still too slow. His giant axe hit the ground directly. Brian, on the other hand, jumped directly onto his axe, swinging the king's sword in his hand almost instantly. Pooh! A burst of blood spattered. The monster with a height of 2.3 meters crashed down. My god! He actually killed Vastana. Fury axe! The countless Gauls present were all shocked, and the Gauls on the Antebellum side were shouting, Stormblade! Bryant! Stormblade! Bryant! And Brian stood up quietly, pointing the long sword obliquely at Rexter. Kill them all. Chapter 48. Under the influence of Brian's crazy record, the elite brought by Rexter retreated steadily and were quickly killed. Rexter was also forced into a dead end. Now there are only two cronies around Rexter, but they are covered with wounds just like Rexter. What tribe are you from? Rexter, tomahawk in hand, looked at Brian, panting heavily. The current Gaul is only synonymous with the Gauls. There is no unified country, only large and small tribes. In the plains of Western Europe and the northern part of the Iberian Peninsula, there are countless tribes, large and small. According to Antebellum, Brian has the title of warrior. The Blade of the Storm. Bryant. It must be from a powerful tribe. But Brian didn't answer him and rushed forward with a sharp sword in his hand. Brush. Just two swords killed Rexter's two cronies. You are fighting me. Let's go to see the god of the underworld together. Rexter, who was full of confidence in the past, no longer has the heroic spirit of the past. Like the last roar of a dying lion. Boom. In just one round, the tomahawk in his hand was thrown by Brian, and he himself was kicked to the ground by the bad guy. Since you want to die, let me tell you, this general is from Rome, Brian said in a very low voice, making sure no one else around could hear him. Rexter was halfway through. Brian cut his throat with a sword. Rexter's consciousness gradually blurred, and before he died, he heard the man's light voice. Your big brother. I killed it too. It takes only 2 hours from Brian to the Gaul tribe. Advertisement: the seriously ill leader Rocters, his second son Rexter, and a group of elders who opposed Antebellum, all died in this short 2 hours. All this happened so fast. So much so that Antebellum was a little dazed, standing in the sea of corpses and blood. She, who was already at an absolute disadvantage, unexpectedly easily turned the tables. Boom. Antebellum didn't wake up until Brian threw Rexter's head at her feet. This is Rexter's head? Brian nodded. Although Rexter's three-dimensional attribute is not very exaggerated, it took a lot of effort to kill him. This guy can always escape the fatal blow at the critical moment. Next, you should cleanse the tribes of these people. Kill the rebels directly. As for the rest, you can sell them to me at a low price. Antebellum, who was already at a loss, was awakened by Brian again. Want to clean? I don't think it's necessary. Antebellum has some intolerance for massacring his own people. If you don't cleanse now, it will be too late when their long swords stab you. And more importantly, you don't cleanse them. You are the 20,000 slaves you promised me before. Brian had been so desperate to counsel it and charge forward at the same time. This job is not for nothing. The previous commitment was 20,000 slaves. The matter of slaves. I will find a way. If you clean it up, let me think about it again. Antebellum said hesitantly. snapped Brian, slapped her straight across the face. Don't forget, this is the agreement we made before. And if you don't do it now, I'm afraid we won't survive the second day. Antebella covered her face and looked at Brian stubbornly. Antebella didn't care much about the agreement. Brian's second sentence directly hit her defenses. The Gauls are aggressive by nature, and the tribes of those killed today will definitely rebel. Advertisement. Antebella and Brian could really die here if they don't cleanse them right now. I can't do this. Then give me the control of your people, and I will do it. Antebella hesitated for a moment. Tears were already on her cheeks, and she finally nodded. Next, all afternoon, the Terego tribe was the sound of carnage. The entire sky was full of chilling colors, and the small river beside the Terego tribe was dyed red. The tribes loyal to Rexter and the Great Elder were all killed. More than 6,000 people were killed that afternoon, and as many as 30,000 people were still under control. In the distance from the tribe of Terego, there is a Roman army stationed here 10 miles away. The small river from the Terego tribe just flows through here. Rex, the tribune of the Legion, went to the creek and saw that the water in the creek was full of blood. How many people have died? Because it is too far away from the Terego tribe, and the river is still bright red. Master Brian doesn't know what's going on? Centurion Polo knew Brian very well. I see this blood. 100% Lord Brian can't get rid of it. According to past experience, wherever Brian went, there was often blood flow. Polo has seen too many such scenes. But Master Brian only has one person. Can he kill so many people? War is not just about brute force, it also requires brains. That's what Master Brian said. In the Terego tribe, the old leader just died, and a battle for power started within the tribe. The people of the tribe are all trembling, for fear that if something goes wrong, they will be killed tomorrow. Brian, you killed too many people today. Antebella could barely stand Brian's killing, and Brian was polishing his longsword. I killed people in your name. If those people want to resent, they will only resent you. Chapter 49. You. Annabella was silent for a while. Everything Brian did today was done in her name. Brian killed the same people she and Tabella killed. Annabella now feels like she doesn't know if working with Brian is right or wrong. Since she met Brian, the entire tribe has died at least 20,000 people. Adding the 30,000 people imprisoned, nearly 1/4 of the tribal people will disappear. Although you are very ambitious, you are still a woman. Now, as a woman, you are extremely weak. Brian wiped the king's sword clean. As expected, it was the sword used by King Arthur. Even after a fierce battle, it was still extremely sharp without any scratches. The first thing you have to do now is to appease the remaining clansmen and tell them that Rexter and the Great Elder conspired to rebel, and you have now killed them. Brian pointed at Tabella very skillfully. Why are you so familiar with this? And Tabella suddenly discovered that everything Brian pointed out was correct, as if he used to do it often. Then, are you screening those 30,000 people? Brian didn't answer her, but pointed to the next step. Why screening? I want to use them to mine. I don't want those old, weak, sick, and disabled. Brian stood up and gave a big stretch. After killing people all day, some are tired. You. Antebella looked at Brian with some trepidation. According to the previous agreement, this is what I deserve. Brian lay down on Antabella's bed without hesitation. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host. Help Antebella gain control of the Terego tribe, get rewards, and randomly exchange a coupon. The rewards have finally arrived. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the random exchange coupon for the first time. And Brian couldn't wait. You must know that there are many heaven-defying equipment in his exchange list, but their points are frighteningly high. Use random coupons now to see what you can get. Advertisement exchange. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a high-precision compass. Compass. Although it is an inconspicuous thing in later generations, it is definitely an artifact in this ancient Roman period. Brian also wanted to make a compass by himself, but there are too many metal and iron impurities here, and the precision of the made compass is too poor to be useful. The compass was introduced to Europe in the 13th century AD. In this Roman period, you can only rely on maps and leading parties. But there are some places where neither the map nor the party leading the way may be able to go out. Especially in this jungle-covered Gaul region, the compass is particularly important. Although the compass is not as good as the blueprint of a strong bow and crossbow, it is not bad at all. What is that in your hand? Antebella suddenly realized that she was going to bed and couldn't start finishing this little thing. Very delicate. It should be a Roman work of art. For a long time, Antebella the center of civilization in the world, is very yearning for the ancient Roman city. Of course, she didn't know that in the east of the world, there was another center of civilization in this world. It was a whole other scene there. Although Antebellum yearned for the city of Rome very much, as a Gaul, it was difficult for him to get there. It's just a small utensil. Brian directly took out a gold coin with the other hand and threw it to Annabella. This is the gold coin of Rome and the coin of luck. Annabella picked up the gold coin and looked at it for a while. It turned out that this was not what Brian had in his hand at all. This is not what it was before. Antebella's concern directly referred to Brian's rummaging. During this period of time, the two have been eating and living together, and she knows exactly what is on Brian, but I have never seen that thing. You read it wrong. It was really a gold coin just now. Otherwise, turn your hands over and let him caress him. How could such an artifact like the compass be easily given to others? Brian had already placed it in the system space. The system space has always had this 10 by 10 by 10 space. Most of Brian's wealth is stored in it. Antebellum was interested and turned Brian upside down. Apart from digging out a few gold coins from him, the previous item was still not found. Advertisement in the end, Brian had been stripped naked, but he was still not found. In this case, I will not be polite. Brian couldn't suppress the evil fire in his heart anymore and rushed directly to Antebellum. Late at night, 10 miles away from the Tarago tribe, a tribal team is advancing rapidly. Boss, we can reach the Tarago tribe in another hour. A horde soldier reports to their leader. Soltos, leader of the Camber tribe, a relatively large tribe around the Tarago tribe, with a population of nearly 70,000 to 80,000 people. Just this morning, they got important news. It is their deadly enemy. The leader of the Tarago tribe has fallen, and their children have engaged in serious internal strife in order to compete for the leader's position. Therefore, Soltos personally led 20,000 Gallic warriors, preparing to attack the Tarago tribe in the dark. However, at this moment, there was a sound of hacking and killing, and that familiar and frightening sound of hell, the horn of the Roman legion. Reporting that the leader is not good, the Roman legion is found ahead, and the number is unknown. A tribe soldier hurried over and reported, "What? The Roman legion? How can there be a Roman legion here?" Soltos had done a survey before, and the nearest Roman legion was 50 miles away. What about the leader? Withdraw. Soltos thought for a moment. Since the Roman legion was here, at least it was a legion. Although there are more than 20,000 people around him, compared with the Roman legion, it is obviously not enough. What's happening here? Centurion Polo kills the last Gaul. Seeing the Gauls retreating like a tide, he did not pursue them, because there are only 2 brigades in their hands. Looking at their costumes, they should belong to another tribe. Rex, the legion tribune, pointed to the white feathers on the Gaul's body. Chapter 50. Early the next morning, follow Brian's instructions. Antebellum prepared a passionate speech. After all, so many people died yesterday, and the rest needed to be appeased. At the same time, tell everyone in the tribe who will be the leader of the tribe in the future. However, plans did not change quickly. Leader. Caistel, one of the 3 remaining tribal elders. He backed Antebellum and saved himself from trouble. What's the matter with wise old Caistel? Antebellum looked at the other party out of breath and asked curiously, "Boss, Sordos from the neighboring tribe is calling." Heard? Brian sneered directly. There are always some idiots who want to take advantage of the fire. Why don't you come sooner or later? Why come now at this time? It is clear that they want to take advantage of the fire. Soltos is the leader of the Cambula tribe, and their tribe is quite strong. What should I do? Antebellum was a little flustered. Although she practiced martial arts since she was a child, she had never commanded a battle of more than 10,000 people. How many people are there on the other side? How is the equipment? Brian turned to Caistel and asked. There are about 20,000 people on the other side, but they are all lightly armed, and they rarely even carry shields. Brian instantly understood that the other party was an opportunist. Seeing the civil strife in the Tarago tribe, he led the army to rush here quickly. Get a vote if you have a chance, and leave quickly if you don't get any benefits. Now summon all the warriors who are willing to serve. How many people can be summoned? Brian knew that after some study, those who survived were in shock. Not many are willing to come out to fight. Master Brian, the number of warriors we can gather is about 20,000. If I give me a little more time to do other people's work, maybe there will be more. Caistel replied respectfully, as if he had regarded Brian as the leader of the tribe. 20,000 people are almost enough. Advertisement. Caistel, order everyone to bring their equipment, especially shields. Yes, soon Castel turned back and left. Brian said to Annabella beside him, I will command this battle. You have to study hard. In the future, when I am not around, you will lead the entire tribe. Annabella nodded. The troops led by Soltos have confronted Antabella's cronies. Haha, let Roctors come to see me. What? If the old guy didn't come out, he died on the woman's belly. Haha haha. Soltos' sarcasm was immediately followed by a burst of laughter. He can die on a woman's belly. I'm afraid you don't have the qualifications. An arrogant voice came from a distance. The warriors of the tribe stepped aside one after another, and Brian came out from the middle. Yesterday's battle, especially the group who witnessed Brian killing Vastana, already regarded Brian as the war god of the tribe, Stormblade. Bryant. Stormblade. Bryant. The tribal soldiers kept beating their shields and shouting Brian's title of warrior. Only the most powerful warrior in a tribe will have the title of warrior. In the Tarago tribe, only the former lord and his son had titles. Stormblade. Bryant? Why haven't I heard of it? Soltos looked at Brian suspiciously. Also, you are not qualified to talk to me yet. Let Roctors come out and answer. Soltos' complexion sank, and he said unkindly, there was a feud between the two tribes, and the Camber tribe was weaker than the Tarago tribe. If it is really as what the newspaper said, Soltos is willing to annex the Tarago tribe in one fell swoop. Advertisement then he will become the most powerful Gaul tribe in Iberia. During the Roman Republic, Gaul was divided into three parts. Iberian Gaul, Northern Gaul, region of France, Gaul south of the Alps among them. The Gaul tribes south of the Alps have all been conquered by Rome. And Iberian Gaul, because of the high mountains and dense forests, Rome has been stalemate with it for decades. Old guy, please, you are not qualified to meet our former leader. Brian drew out the long sword at his waist and said coldly. Those who didn't know thought Brian was defending Roctor's honor. I don't know. The one who really killed Roctors really didn't come. The former leader? So who is the current leader? Soltos keenly discovered that the other party had changed the lord. Our leader. The incarnation of Tarago's wisdom. Daughter of the eagle. Antabella. Castel's faithful introducer, Annabella. Seeing that Annabella was dressed in light armor, she was heroic, and at her waist was a long sword that only a tribal leader could have. The female leader? Haha. Soltos glanced at it, and Annabella burst out laughing instantly. Because in this patriarchal era, both Rome and the surrounding barbarians looked down on women extremely. Only very few small tribes have female leaders. But those are either all female tribes, or the sons of the tribal leaders are all dead, and can only be inherited by daughters. Soltos' sneer was met with a roar of laughter. The Gaul soldiers on Antabella's side looked at each other in blank dismay. Because they know that Antabella won the position of leader, the name is not right, and the words are not right. Acquired by bloody and violent means. At this moment, many soldiers hesitated. How dare you insult my master? I am willing to fight you to the death. Seeing that it was not good, Brian immediately pointed the long sword in his hand at Soltos and said, the demeanor of a loyal subordinate.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.